Chapter 702. 2 chapters in one. Ha! Boom! Gao Yuan leaped high into the air and slashed out with his broadsword. A small iceberg in front of him was split into two. An illusion realm ice beast hiding behind the iceberg was cut in half by this fierce slash. Countless ice cubes fell like raindrops. Gao Yuan's figure flashed and swept past the corpse of the ice beast. A black life crystal larger than a fist appeared in his hand. "You've killed 5 ice beasts today, haven't you? You're really lucky." Gao Yuan had just put the life crystal into his storage bracelet when a bald old man in a black robe appeared beside him and said with a smile. This person was Grand Duke Hong. Gao Yuan carried his broadsword on his shoulder and patted a few ice particles off his shoulder. He laughed and said, "It's getting late. We should go back. Otherwise, we'll be finished if we encounter a white tide." Grand Duke Hong looked up at the sky and nodded. At this moment, a curved white line had appeared in the sky. This white line was growing at an extremely fast speed. When this white line completely covered the sky, the most terrifying white tide in the cold zone would come. At that time, the world would be white, and the temperature would drop to the point where it could instantly freeze an illusion realm cultivator to death. The two of them flashed between the icebergs and soon disappeared. The ice beasts killed by Gao Yuan looked similar to snow leopards. They were covered in white fur and had huge bodies. An adult ice beast could be as long as 5 meters. The higher their level, the larger their bodies would be. Legend had it that the most powerful ice beast king in the cold zone was sleeping underground. If it woke up and moved, the entire cold zone would shake. Ice beasts moved extremely fast and hunted other exotic beasts in the cold zone for food. Among the exotic beasts in the cold zone, they were at the top of the food chain. There were many types and numbers of other exotic beasts in the cold zone. However, due to the harsh climate in the cold zone, it was still incomparable to the flame zone. After Gao Yuan and great-grandfather Hong left, a series of cracking noises came from the ice surface. A large group of white scorpion-like creatures gathered. In less than 5 minutes, they gnawed the ice beasts, which were over 10 meters long, into skeletons. The bones of this ice beast were like crystals, sparkling and translucent. Their blood was also translucent. This was probably the origin of the name, Ice Beast. The creatures that gnawed on the corpses of the ice beasts were known as white lice. They were snow white, just like the flies on Earth. They were everywhere. They usually stayed away from living creatures and only ate corpses. Their sense of smell was very sensitive. In a cold zone, they could smell blood from dozens of miles away. Swish, 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 whistling sounds could be heard. A large group of white, bat-like exotic beasts with fleshy wings swooped down from the sky. The white lice that had just finished eating the ice beasts and hadn't left yet were taken away by these exotic beasts. The white lice that had just eaten their fill became food for other exotic beasts. These creatures that ate white lice were called winged spirits. After the winged spirits passed by, the white lice that didn't have time to crawl under the ice layer were all eaten by the winged spirits. Although they couldn't see the white lice, the winged spirits still circled this area a few times. After not finding any white lice, they swelled their bellies and flew forward along the side of the ice mountain. The winged spirits couldn't fly high. They flew along the ice mountain and could borrow the power of the air currents. This was also dangerous. When the winged spirits passed by an ice mountain, a series of popping sounds could be heard. Countless white tentacles reached out from the ice layer. These tentacles were extremely fast, like the tentacles of an octopus. There were also suction cups on them. A group of winged spirits that flew past were attacked by these tentacles. They flapped their wings and flew higher. However, a group of white birds flew over. After the white eagle-like birds flew past, only a small half of the winged spirits escaped from the tentacles. This kind of eagle-like bird had a wingspan of 5 meters. It had 2 sharp claws, and at the end of its wings was also a pair of sharp claws. This kind of bird was called Sky Foothill. It was the king of the skies in the frozen area. After the Sky Foothill flew away, suddenly there was the sound of wind blowing. A frost beast that was 6 to 7 meters long jumped over like lightning and stopped on the ice layer where the white tentacles had appeared. At this time, there were still many holes on the ice layer. The frost beast used its two sharp front claws and began to dig at the ice layer. In a short while, its entire body was under the ice layer. Rumble. After a while, the ground began to shake. The gigantic frost beast retreated from the hole it had dug. The ice layer within dozens of meters of it began to bulge. Pong! Suddenly, there was a loud sound. The frost beast used its mouth to pull out a ball-shaped creature with a large clump of tentacles. Using both its mouth and claws, it quickly tore the creature called the Mido beast into pieces and began to feast. Before the frost beast could finish eating the Mido beasts, the white line in the sky had already covered a large part of the sky and was emitting a bright white light. At this time, it was the brightest time in the frozen area. However, the temperature was dropping at an extremely fast rate. The frost beast that was still not full looked at the sky and roared. It took the largest piece of meat and ran down the ice mountain. A few minutes later, the frost beast had entered an ice cave at the foot of the ice mountain. The ice cave was very deep and had many twists and turns. It was hundreds of meters underground. When the white tide came, they would only be able to avoid being frozen to death by hiding under the ice layer. After Shi Chun Yu and the others came to the frozen area, they had lost many people before they were able to familiarize themselves with the changes in the climate here. Gao Yuan and Grand Dukong ran through the ice mountain for about 20 minutes before they entered an ice cave. They were the last to return. As soon as they entered the ice cave, the two guards guarding the cave immediately sealed the entrance. After the white tide came, it would last for about 100 hours. After the white tide had passed, a star would appear in the sky. At this time, the humans and animals that lived in the frozen area could come out and move around. Then, after 100 hours, the white tide would come again. In truth, the white tide was equivalent to a night where they could not go out. In the flame area, there was food called strong grain, and in the frozen area, there was food called satiation fruit. The name of this food sounded a little vulgar, but it was the main food of humans and vegetarians in the frozen area. The satiation fruit first grew in naturally formed ice caves and covered the walls of the ice cave. Its roots could reach hundreds of meters deep into the ice layer. The fruit that grew was as big as a football. When it matured, its shell would turn yellow, and it could be picked. The strong grain was only delicious when it was cooked, and the satiation fruit could be directly cracked open the hard and crisp shell. One could use a spoon to dig into the flesh inside, which is like a dragon fruit. It tasted sweet. While walking in the ice cave, Gao Yuan and Grand Dukong casually picked the satiation fruit from the ice cave wall and ate as they walked. After eating, there was a long, finger-thick seed in the satiation fruit. Gao Yuan and Grand Dukong inserted the seed into the ice cave wall. In less than 10 days, the two seeds would sprout and grow. The satiation fruit and the strong grain were like treasures bestowed by the gods to humans. People who were born in the frozen area and the flame area would not starve even in the harsh environment. Shi Chun Yu brought most of the experts of the Eternal Temple to this world. Many years ago, she came to this world under the protection of Halua Yangli and saw a more exciting world. After returning, she could not forget that she had always wanted to lead the cultivators of that world to this world. However, the conservative superstar temple thought that she was a heretic. Sitting on the chair in the Ice Palace Hall, Shi Chun Yu recalled the situation in the previous world. When they first came to this world, using the Wei Kong worship, they suffered a lot. First, they faced the harsh environment. Then they fought with the tribe in the frozen area, and many people were killed or injured. Now, Shi Chun Yu had less than 3,000 people under her command. According to the ancient rules of this place, Shi Chun and Yu were considered as outsiders. Although they had killed a second-class tribe, they could only be considered as a third-class tribe. Every once in a while, they would have to hand in a certain amount of life crystals or lice crystals. Otherwise, they would be in danger of being exterminated. Although they did not appear in the right place, Shi Chun Yu's plan had delayed for a long time. But now, the situation was almost back to the trajectory of her plan. This ice palace, which was thousands of meters below the ice layer, had just been built. The previous tribe was too barbaric. It was just a simple ice cave. Each family had to dig a small cave for themselves to live in. Shi Chun Yu obviously did not like this situation. She used the thousands of people who had been defeated and captured to build such an exquisite ice palace. The building material of the ice palace was a kind of white rock wrapped in ice. This rock material was fine and was good for carving runes. While the entire ice palace was built to be grand and exquisite, Black Talisman Lord had also set up many defensive rune arrays. Among the people who came to this world with Shi Chun Yu, Yang Tian knew other than Gao Yuan, Grand Duke Hong, Black Talisman Lord, and Immeasurable Star Lord. Although Immeasurable Star Lord did not join the Eternal Temple, he had helped Shi Chun Yu a lot. How was your trip this time? Gao Yuan and Grand Duke Hong had just reached the gate of the Ice Palace to see Shi Chun Yu when Immeasurable Star Lord appeared and asked them with a smile. Not bad, Gao Yuan replied with a smile. Grand Duke Hong nodded to Immeasurable Star Lord with a smile. The three of them greeted each other and turned around to look at the gate of the Ice Palace. They had been in hiding for so long. It was time to go out. Their foundation was built here. But this world was huge. It would be a pity if they did not go out and explore. It had been a long time since they last saw Black Talisman Lord. It was said that he had left the ice region. They did not know if he had gone to the Clouds region or the Yin region. The three of them looked at each other and stepped into the Ice Palace. After a rumbling sound, a ray of blue light appeared not far away. Yang Tian frowned and carefully walked over. The door of a stone room was opened. There was a teleportation formation disc inside. Phew! Seeing the teleportation formation disc, Yang Tian breathed out. He had finally passed the 6th level. This stage was simply too strange for him. Everything that happened was simply inconceivable. The first thing was that he saw a giant warship in the sky. The second thing was that beasts turned into insects. The third thing was that he saw living runes. If the talisman array of this level was man-made, then the person who had constructed the talisman array of this level was really terrifying in terms of talisman scripts. The cave was very deep. He could go even deeper. What had happened before had made Yang Tian very curious about this place. Looking at the teleportation formation, he began to hesitate. Boom! Just as Yang Tian was hesitating, the thought of going deeper took over. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion. At the same time, the cave began to shake again. Yang Tian turned around and could not help but widen his eyes. Giant rocks had fallen from the front and back of the cave, sealing it. Now, there was no need for Yang Tian to hesitate. He could only leave this place through the teleportation formation. Yang Tian sighed and walked toward the teleportation formation. As he was about to leave, the strange program could not appear in front of others. The particles that made up its body spread out and attached themselves to Yang Tian's chest. After the blue light disappeared, Yang Tian had already arrived at the entrance of the Poldwood Hall. At the same time, the bell rang 5 times in the Poldwood Hall. That meant that Yang Tian had passed the 6th level. Everyone, you could go back the way you came. A middle-aged man from the Poldwood race appeared at the entrance of the 6th level. After the bell had rung, he said to the onlookers. While his voice was soft, it echoed in everyone's ears. Everyone had no choice but to leave. In less than 10 minutes, all the onlookers had left. Only Huey Meow Meow, Koo Man, and a middle-aged man from the Poldwood race were left. Koo Man was the supervisor of the temple. Naturally, the Poldwood race would not dare to neglect him. As for Huey Meow Meow, she had come with Yang Tian. Since Yang Tian had not left, she had the right to go up as well. The middle-aged man from the Poldwood race did not say anything. With a wave of his hand, a teleportation formation disc appeared. He then made an inviting gesture to Koo Man and Huey Meow Meow. After Black Talisman Lord left the cold zone, he had been heading east. He had suffered a lot. If he had not cultivated runes, he would have died in the mouth of a mutated beast or even been killed by other cultivators. When he reached the border of the Cloud Zone, Black Talisman Lord suddenly heard about the existence of the Poldwood Mountain and the natural rune array. He immediately decided to go to the Flame Cloud Zone to see the natural rune array. Anyway, His main mission this time was to scout the way and gather information about the outside world. Although Shichen Yu had been to this world with Iluo and Yangli, she had not been to many places. In addition, it had been a long time, so she did not know much about this world. When Black Talisman Lord appeared on a teleportation formation in the Pulled Wood Mountain, the bell had rung 5 times. Black Talisman Lord asked a passerby in an unfamiliar language how he could see the natural rune array. The passerby, he asked, merely pointed to the top of the mountain. He is so powerful at such a young age. Yes, he actually broke 6 rune arrays of the Pulled Wood race. Such a talent will definitely be able to enter the temple. His future is limitless. As Black Talisman Lord walked up, the people he met were all talking about breaking the rune array. Before he reached the top of the mountain, Black Talisman Lord understood that it was a child named Mu-E who had broken all 6 talisman arrays set up by the Llama tribe in one go. The time taken to break all 6 arrays was the shortest in history. Chapter 703. The Black Talisman Lord cultivated runes. When he heard the discussion around him, he was moved and quickened his steps. Yang Tian walked into the Pullingwood Hall. The Pullingwood Patriarch and the 12 elders immediately stood up and looked at Yang Tian with a smile. Although Yang Tian appeared to be very young, the Patriarch and elders of the Wood Pulling tribe did not show any signs of surprise. Instead, their eyes were filled with anticipation. The world was very big, and there were all kinds of strange things. The Pullingwood clan was guarding many incredible secrets. Therefore, it was not strange for Yang Tian to have such achievements in runes at such a young age. It was because Yang Tian was young that they were looking forward to it. It was only reasonable for an unimaginable person to solve an unimaginable problem. After sizing up Yang Tian, the elder of the Llama clan smiled and said, "I am the patriarch of the Llama clan, Llama Lan. These 12 are the elders of my clan. This is Llama Wu. This is Llama Yang." As the Pullingwood Patriarch, it was rare for him to speak so politely to others. He used a gentle tone to introduce himself and the 12 elders to Yang Tian. "I am Mui." After Lamulin finished speaking, Yang Tian nodded and said indifferently. Now, everyone knew each other. Huey Meow Meow and Ku Man walked into the hall. When Huey Meow Meow saw Yang Tian, she almost called out Yang Tian's name. However, when she realized that Ku Man was beside her, she could not help but be shocked. She quickly shut her mouth and silently walked to Yang Tian's side. "Priest Ku Man is also here. Welcome." When he saw Ku Man, Lamulin frowned and greeted him with a smile. Compared to before, his tone of voice was much harsher. The Pullingwood clan had been oppressed by the temple for countless years. The people of the Pullingwood clan had always been against the people of the temple. Ku Man had come to the Pullingwood clan this time to ask for some rune information. Flame formation, cold formation, star-shattering formation, and light-extinguishing formation were 4 fierce formations passed down from ancient times. The Starry Sky Divine Hall controlled the flame array, the Everlasting Divine Hall controlled the light-extinguishing array, and the Sky Domain Divine Hall controlled the star-shattering array. As for the cold array, it was shared by all 3 divine halls. After witnessing the power of the flame array last time, the Limitless Temple wanted to master the flame array. Ku Man came to the Pullingwood clan this time because he wanted the Pullingwood clan to help the Limitless Temple research the flame array. For such a matter, if someone below the rank of minister came, the Llama tribe would think that the Divine Hall was looking down on them. If the Hall Master came personally, he would be praising the Pullingwood tribe. The presence of the Seashore, whose status was below the Hall Master, just happened to avoid these 2 problems. Ku Man hadn't thought that she would encounter a rune genius on this trip to Pullingwood Mountain. If she could bring this child back to the temple, then she would have made a great contribution and her status in the temple would rise. Perhaps after the temple master left to travel the Sea of Stars, she would become the next temple master. The 3 shrines competed with each other, and there was also such competition within the shrines. Where there were people, there would be competition. Ku Man wasn't in a hurry to make a request to Llama Lan. He wanted to see what would happen next. Yang Tian wanted to see the natural rune array. After La Mulan greeted Kuman, he immediately said, I want to see the legendary natural rune array. This is my purpose for coming here. Ha ha ha. The moment Yang Tian said this, La Mulan laughed. In fact, even if Yang Tian didn't make this request, they would have let Yang Tian try to break the natural rune array. If Yang Tian could break the seal at the entrance of the natural rune array, then they would have fulfilled their wish. After chuckling, La Mulan raised her hand and made an inviting gesture. Mui, please. After saying this, La Mulan turned around and walked towards the innermost part of the hall. The way La Mulan treated Yang Tian was like how she treated someone of the same age. In the innermost part of the hall, there was a huge wooden statue enshrined. No one knew how long it had been there, but the statue's face wasn't very clear. La Mulan came before the statue and bowed before it. Then, she turned to Yang Tian and said, This is the ancestor of my race. His name is the Rune Master, a great cultivator. The Rune Master. When Yang Tian heard these two words, his eyes suddenly widened. A look of astonishment flashed across his face. Yang Tian had heard of the Rune Master before. The strange program had been created by the Rune Master. Was this Rune Master the Rune Master of that world? If they were the same person, then what kind of secrets were hidden within? Yang Tian took a closer look at the statue. Because the statue's face was blurry, he couldn't see the Rune Master's appearance or age clearly. Although the statue's face was blurry, its eyes still gave off a dignified aura. Also, Yang Tian noticed that there was something wrong with the statue's hairstyle. It had a head of long hair with two strands hanging behind its ears in front of its chest. The hair at the back of its head was divided into 3 strands and tied up. Yang Tian had seen this hairstyle before and felt that it was somewhat familiar. However, although he knew that he had seen it before, he couldn't recall at the moment. Although it was only a little familiar, Yang Tian was more than 60% sure that this Rune Master was the one who had created the strange program. While Yang Tian was thinking, La Mulan took 2 steps forward. She raised her right hand and placed it on a square object placed in the statue's palm. The square object in the statue's hand was black. It was unknown what material it was made of, but it was engraved with runes. When La Mulan placed her hand on it, the runes on the black square lit up. Then, a teleportation talisman array appeared on both sides of the statue and lit up with a bright blue light. Kuman had seen this situation before. A faint smile appeared in her eyes. After the 2 teleportation talisman arrays appeared, La Mulan smiled at Yang Tian and said, One of these 2 talisman arrays is fake. If you step on the fake talisman array, you will be teleported to a land of peril. Please come with me. After saying that, La Mulan walked into the teleportation talisman array on the right side of the statue and disappeared in a flash. Yang Tian hesitated for a moment before walking into the teleportation talisman array. After Yang Tian's figure disappeared in the teleportation talisman array, Hueha Miao Miao immediately followed behind. Then, the 12 elders of the Wood tribe followed. Kuman was the last to walk into the teleportation talisman array. When Yang Tian reappeared, he found himself in an underground cavern again. Behind him was a messy pile of rubble. The diameter of the cavern was about 5 meters. It was exactly the same as the cavern he passed in the 6th level of the array glyphs. Yang Tian was looking at the situation in the cave curiously. La Mulan smiled and said, Mui, actually the 6th talisman array is somewhat related to the natural talisman array. Only by passing through the previous seal can one be qualified to see the natural talisman array. As she spoke, Hueha Miao Miao, the 12 elders of the Wood tribe, and Kuman walked out of the teleportation talisman array one after another. In the cave, one side was blocked by rubble and the other side was dark. One couldn't see the bottom. Lamulin raised his hand, and a black cube appeared in his hand. The black cube was exactly the same as the cube that the statue was holding. It was also filled with runes. Under Yang Tian's curious gaze, La Mulan used his finger to tap on the black cube a few times. Instantly, the cave was lit up. It was very bright. Please, La Mulan looked into the depths of the cave and then gestured to Yang Tian to follow him. Yang Tian nodded. Under La Mulan's lead, Yang Tian and the others walked into the depths of the cave. Black Talisman Lord had already arrived at the first talisman array. It had not been long since Yang Tian had broken the talisman array, but the talisman array had already been repaired. Boom! Because he was walking too fast, Black Talisman Lord crashed into the talisman array's energy. Ha ha! Seeing what happened, someone could not help but laugh out loud. If he was in his original world, and someone dared to laugh at Black Talisman Lord like that, Black Talisman Lord would have already killed the person who laughed at him. But now, Black Talisman Lord was no longer one of the top elites. All he could do was to suppress his anger and stare coldly at the person who laughed. Don't you know the rules of the Llama tribe? If you want to go up, you must pass through 6 levels. This is only the first level, the simplest. Before the person could finish his sentence, Black Talisman Lord had already made his move. He raised his hand, and a blue talisman artifact that looked like a compass appeared in his hand. After taking out the talisman artifact, Black Talisman Lord used his finger to move the needle on it. The needle spun once and then slowly came to a stop. During this process, many of the runes on the talisman artifact lit up and began to emit various colors of light. After the needle had stopped, Black Talisman Lord smirked and waved his hand. Boom! The talisman array for this level was broken once again. To the others, Black Talisman Lord's speed in breaking through this level was faster than Yang Tian's. Of course, this was because Yang Tian had spent most of his time observing the talisman array and did not use any auxiliary tools. Those who cultivated talisman, Dao, could naturally tell the difference between the two of them. The person who had laughed at Black Talisman Lord earlier widened his eyes in shock when he saw Black Talisman Lord walk into the cave. What had happened? Talisman Dao experts had appeared one after another in such a short period of time. After being stunned for a moment, the person immediately followed. The cave extended downwards. He kept walking and walking as if there was no end to it. Suddenly, the sound of a bell rang from Llama Hall. They could actually hear the sound of the bell from outside in this cave. Someone had broken through the second level's talisman array. After hearing the sound of the bell, La Mulan stopped in her tracks. It was obvious that someone was trying to break through again. At this moment, La Mulan looked at Yang Tian and said embarrassedly, Muyi, it seems that we have to wait for a while. You know the rules of the Llama tribe. Yang Tian frowned and nodded. All right, I can wait. Yang Tian was very unhappy at this moment. He was about to see the natural talisman array, but he did not expect to be interrupted. No matter who encountered such a situation, they would be unhappy. Patriarch, why don't I go back and watch while you bring Muyi to that place? Anyway, it's impossible to pass through that place in a short period of time. The elder named Lama Wu glanced at Kuman and said to Lama Lan, That's a good suggestion. It won't waste everyone's time. Although the Llama tribe has such a rule, the rules are set by humans. We should be flexible. If that person can't pass through the next few levels, wouldn't everyone have waited in vain? Kuman added as soon as Lama Wu finished speaking. Kuman was even more unhappy than Yang Tian at this moment. Lama Lan frowned and hesitated for a moment before nodding in agreement. The seal at the entrance of the natural talisman array was not so easy to break. He did not know if Yang Tian could succeed, but he could let Yang Tian try first. They had already traveled more than half the distance. After Lama Wu turned back, Lama Lan led Yang Tian and the others for about 15 minutes before finally arriving. This is the entrance to the natural talisman array. Lama Lan pointed at the entrance sealed by a strange object and said to Yang Tian, Only through here can we see the true natural talisman array. For countless years, apart from our ancestor, the talisman master, no one has been able to pass through here. While Lama Lan was speaking, Yang Tian's eyes were already wide open. This was because the strange object that Lama Lan mentioned was actually the particles that formed the talisman array. This is man-made, right? Yang Tian looked at the countless moving particles and said calmly. Lama Lan nodded. This is the seal set by the talisman master. Since Lama Lan admitted it, Yang Tian also vaguely understood some things. Dong. Dong. At this moment, 2 bells rang out. This meant that the 3rd level's talisman array outside had been broken. To be able to break through the 3rd level meant that the person who had come was also very accomplished in the talisman Dao. Yang Tian did not care about the level of the person outside in the talisman Dao. At this moment, he was communicating with this strange program in his mind. The countless tiny particles that sealed the hole in front of him were very dense and constantly moving, like countless small mosquitoes gathered together. In order to break this talisman array, the strange program had to do it personally. Yang Tian patted his chest, then raised his right hand and opened his palm. The countless small particles controlled by the runic program flew out from Yang Tian's collar and gathered in Yang Tian's palm, forming a triangular object. In the minds of Lama Lan and the others, this object of Yang Tian's was definitely a talisman artifact. Soon, Lama Lan and the 11 elders all opened their eyes wide at the same time. This was because they saw that the material that formed this talisman artifact was too similar to the material that sealed the cave. No, it was not similar, it should be. Looking at Yang Tian's young and tender face, Lama Lan could not help but guess that this Muyi in front of them did not come from the same place as the talisman master, right? The Lama tribe did not know the origins of the talisman master. Yang Tian held the triangular object that the strange program had transformed into and said indifferently, "The reason why this talisman array seal is so difficult to break is because these small objects all have talisman scripts on them. They are all formed from pure talisman script energy. Once touched, they will quickly combine with each other and form talisman scripts, creating countless talisman arrays. It's like this. Every time we touch it, an incomprehensible talisman array will appear. Every time we break a talisman array, more will appear. If they're only distributed over a certain distance in the cave, we can force our way through. However, the cave that is covered by them is too long." After Yang Tian finished speaking, an elder immediately said, "Let me try." After this elder finished speaking, Yang Tian said indifferently, "The strange program had already thought of a way to break this talisman artifact. It seemed complicated, but as long as one knew its essence, understanding and using it was very simple. Previously, Yang Tian, the little blue dragon, and the strange program all felt that they had not absorbed enough pure talisman script energy. They did not expect there to be so much here. This was really too good." Yang Tian was about to make a move, but he did not expect those small particles to move first. A portion of them quickly condensed together and formed a time rune. Chapter 704. Lamulin and the others did not look surprised when they saw these strange granular objects gathering into a rune at an extremely fast speed. They must have seen this before. Even Kuman's expression was the same. Huey Meow Meow was the most surprised. This was her first time seeing such a strange thing. Her eyes were wide open. "Break!" Lamulin shouted in the face of this rune and raised his hand to slap it. After the rune was slapped, it immediately disappeared and turned into time energy. Lamulin immediately took a few steps back and dodged the energy after the time rune was destroyed. Lamulin said, "These strange runes will release the corresponding rune energy after being destroyed. I remember that a long time ago, several young people of my tribe did not listen to our advice and secretly came here. One of them had half his body destroyed by space, one became an old man, and one disappeared into thin air. No one knows where he went. Muyi, you have to be careful." When he saw the strange rune treasure in Yang Tian's hand, Lamulin guessed that Yang Tian and the rune master came from the same place. However, he still reminded Yang Tian. Yang Tian smiled and said, "Thank you for the reminder, Patriarch." Yang Tian thought that this old man Lamulin was not bad. However, he knew that Lamulin wanted to use him to break the seal in front of him. After reminding Yang Tian, Lamulin dodged to the side. At this moment, another rune was formed. This was a spatial rune. After it was formed, it did not come out of the dense granules. Instead, it crawled inwards and soon disappeared. Yang Tian knew that there were not only countless granular objects formed by rune energy in front of him, but there were also many more runes. The number of runes might be even more than what he had encountered before. The strange program was already prepared. After Lamulin moved to the side, the rune treasure in Yang Tian's hand suddenly spread out and formed a huge circle in the air. As soon as this circle formed, it produced a strong, attractive force and attracted the granules in front. After these granules passed through the circle, they had undergone a subtle change and could be directly absorbed by Yang Tian and the others. Yang Tian stood behind the circle with a smile on his face, enjoying the feeling of the rune energy entering his body. The little blue dragon lying on Yang Tian's shoulder also had an expression of enjoyment. Seeing Yang Tian and the little blue dragon, Kuman frowned. He could sense that Yang Tian was absorbing the energy of these small particles. Thus, she slowly approached Yang Tian. Lamulin saw Kuman's strange actions and raised her hand, gesturing for Kuman to stop. In order not to disturb Yang Tian, Lamulin did not say anything. When Huey Meow Meow saw Kuman's malicious actions, she flashed to Yang Tian's side, and a black whip appeared in her hand. Kuman glanced at Huey Meow Meow and sneered. He waved his hand, and Huey Meow Meow was pushed to the side by a gentle force. Then, Withered Barbarian slowly reached out his hand to touch the energy passing through the circle. As soon as he made contact with the granules, Withered Barbarian felt a sharp pain. He could not help but take a deep breath and quickly pulled back his hand and took a few steps back. Yang Tian was able to absorb the energy because Yang Tian and the little blue dragon had special bodies. While Withered Barbarian was powerful and was a temple warden, compared to others, there was nothing special about her. Naturally, a normal body would not be able to absorb the rune energy. Seeing Kuman retract his hand in pain, the corners of Lamulin's mouth curled up, and a cold smile flashed across her face. The Llama tribe had been guarding this place for a very long time. They had used countless methods to try to break the seal, but they had all failed. Of course, they knew that these granules were formed by pure rune energy. They had also tried to take the energy for themselves, but they had all failed. The few that tried it at first were all corroded by the rune energy until nothing was left. Withered Barbarian was an old woman who did not understand runes. Naturally, she did not know how powerful this energy was. While she was not injured, the pain was too intense. Withered Barbarian waved her hand and snorted coldly. The Llama tribe thought that there were a lot of granules, but the truth was there were not many left. Nothing that existed could remain unchanged forever, especially man-made things. While the seal was set up by the Talisman Master, there was not much energy left in the seal after such a long time. If the people of the Lamu clan were willing to sacrifice their lives, they would be able to break the seal. However, their past experiences had caused their thinking to become rigid. In less than an hour, all the granules in the cave had been absorbed by Yang Tian and the little blue dragon. After the granules had disappeared for a long time, Yang Tian was still standing there, not moving at all. He even closed his eyes. The little blue dragon on Yang Tian's shoulder was doing the same. This was because a special world of energy had formed within the human and dragon. It was a world that used rune energy as its foundation. This world of energy was not large. Yang Tian called it the Rune World. It was formed in Yang Tian's origin realm. It was a small world of its own. It looked like a colorful planet and was very beautiful. Yang Tian's Rune World existed in the origin realm, while the little blue dragon's Rune World existed in its Dragon Ball world. As soon as the Rune World was formed, Yang Tian and the little blue dragon actually gave off ripples of energy that only appeared when they broke through the Returnant's realm and reached the Illusion realm. This situation shocked Lama Lan, Withered Barbarian, and the others. They could tell that Yang Tian and the little blue dragon were already cultivators of the Illusion realm. For the human and dragon to show such signs again, it meant that two worlds of energy had formed within the bodies of Yang Tian and the little blue dragon. In the history of cultivation in this world, cultivators who cultivated two worlds of energy had existed long ago. Almost every single one of them was a peak expert. For example, the temple lords of the three sacred halls were such cultivators. Two worlds of energy had appeared in Yang Tian's body, which made withered barbarian extremely envious and jealous. As a supervisor of the Divine Hall, she was also a genius. At this moment, she felt that she was far inferior to Yang Tian. What was even more surprising was that the second world of energy in Yang Tian's body was composed of rune energy. In the history of cultivation on this continent, it seemed that no one had ever been able to use rune energy to construct a world of energy. The energy that cultivators used to construct their worlds of energy was formed when the energy they cultivated reached a certain quality. There are also some people who used external energy, such as fire, water, electricity. Using external energy to construct a world of energy to reach the illusion realm was even more perfect than using one's own energy, because it came from nature. But what about rune energy? But it was the one who controlled the natural energy. After a brief moment of shock, she carefully studied Yang Tian again. Her feelings towards Yang Tian had changed. Chapter 705. Using the power of nature to construct an energy world was a very complicated process. The success rate was not high. Kuman had become a minister of the everlasting temple because of the energy world in her body. In fact, all the other ministers of the temple were the same as her. Without extraordinary talent, how could they achieve a position that was second only to one person? But now Kuman felt danger. The power of nature reinforced and countered each other. Yang Tian had the rune energy world, which could counter all cultivators who used the power of nature to construct an energy world. This was because runes were actually used to drive the power of nature. They could produce many incredible effects and powerful energy. Kuman loved talent, but she would not allow someone who could threaten her to exist. If Yang Tian agreed to join the everlasting temple, then they would be ministers of the same temple and would not become mortal enemies. But if Yang Tian did not agree, Kuman planned to kill Yang Tian and nip the thread in the bud. With this thought, a trace of killing intent flashed in Kuman's eyes as he looked at Yang Tian. When Lamulin saw the expression in Kuman's eyes, the corners of his mouth curled up again. As one grew older, one naturally understood the meaning behind Kuman's gaze. The formation of the rune world did not cause much of a stir in Yang Tian's body. It was as natural as water flowing through a canal. Soon, Yang Tian opened his eyes and let out a long breath. His eyes were full of surprise. This was because he did not just obtain the rune world. More importantly, through the rune world, he could use all the rune energy to form the runes he needed. In the past, when building the rune array, Yang Tian had to carve the runes. Even with the help of the Strange program, he had to use his hands to make all sorts of gestures to activate the rune energy. But now, with the rune energy, he could skip this step and build the rune array much faster. After opening his eyes, Yang Tian smiled and turned to look at Kuman. At Yang Tian's level, he was very sensitive to the aura of the outside world. He could clearly feel Kuman's killing intent towards him. If a cultivator lower than Yang Tian or the same level as Yang Tian showed such killing intent toward Yang Tian would have already attacked. Kuman was much stronger than Yang Tian. Even if Yang Tian and the little blue dragon worked together, they would not be Kuman's match. Yang Tian could only endure for now. Yang Tian's smile was very pure, but Kuman's heart skipped a beat. Mui, thank you so much. You finally helped my tribe break this seal. Just as Kuman was about to open his mouth and invite Yang Tian to join Everlasting Temple, Lamulan's voice suddenly sounded. Lamulin was very excited as she spoke. No need to thank me. I just want to see a natural talisman array. Yang Tian smiled. However, Lamulin shook her head and said, I'm afraid I can't. The secret of my tribe cannot be known to outsiders. When Lamulan said the word no, Yang Tian frowned as a bad premonition appeared in his heart. It seemed like the Lamulin tribe was ready to burn the bridge after crossing it. From the beginning to the end, the Lamulin tribe had been using Yang Tian and other talisman experts. Lamulin, what are you talking about? The moment Lamu Lan finished speaking, Kuman reacted and looked at Lamu Lan coldly before Yang Tian said anything. Something was wrong. Huey Meow Meow immediately leaned closer to Yang Tian and tightened her grip on the black whip. She had a feeling that a battle was about to start. The 11 elders beside Lamulin also spread out at this moment. Their bodies blocked the entrance to the innermost cave. Lamulin sneered and said, "Kuman, don't you know what we want to do? I advise you to leave as soon as possible. This has nothing to do with you." Kuman sneered and said, "This continent has 4 major regions. My everlasting temple is in charge of everything. Unless your Lamulin tribe wants to completely disappear from this world, you should know the consequences of going against our divine hall." Huh. After Kuman finished speaking, Lamulin laughed loudly. She seemed very carefree. Seeing Lamulin laughing, Yang Tian touched Huey Meow Meow's hand and slowly retreated. Yang Tian did not want to participate in a battle between experts. After laughing, Lamulin looked at Kuman and sneered, "My Lamulin tribe has been oppressed by your temple for countless years. Now, I can finally vent my anger. It won't be long before my Lamu clan will be able to destroy your temple and become the most powerful clan on this continent. I want to build the Lamulin temple, the only temple on this continent." Oomph. What a beautiful dream. Unfortunately, you can't achieve it. A cold voice came out of Kuman's mouth. Before she finished speaking, she pounced at Lamulin. When Yang Tian saw Kuman move, he immediately pulled Huey Meow Meow and ran. At this moment, no one stopped Yang Tian from escaping. To Lamulin and Kuman, Yang Tian was still a small character. Although Yang Tian was very impressive in Rune Dao and had 2 energy worlds, Yang Tian was only a cultivator in the illusion realm. As long as they dealt with the powerful opponent in front of them, it would be much easier to deal with Yang Tian. At this moment, whether it was Lamulin or Kuman, they had no intention of killing Yang Tian. Boom, boom, boom. While running, Yang Tian heard loud noises coming from behind him. The cave was also shaking. From time to time, there would be strong air currents. Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow used the air currents to increase their escape speed. To Yang Tian, not being able to see a natural rune array was a huge regret. Fortunately, this trip was not in vain. At least he had obtained a rune world. This cave was abnormally sturdy. Even if there were violent tremors, no sand or stones fell, and it did not collapse. Amidst the rumbling sounds, the people in the cave didn't hear the 4 bell tolls from outside. This meant that the 5 talisman arrays outside had already been destroyed. While Lamulin and the others were fighting with Kuman, Lamulin did not know what was going on below. He was leading Black Rune Lord down the cave. As long as the seal outside the natural rune array was not broken, the Lamulin tribe would not reveal their ferocious faces to the world and the temple. What happened to the Lamulin tribe's leader? Huey Meow Meow finally could not help but ask curiously. They had already traveled a long distance. When Yang Tian heard Huey Meow Meow's question, he slowed down and said with a smile, "That old man has gone crazy." Crazy? No way. Huey Meow Meow was shocked. Yang Tian said, "If it were me, I would probably go crazy too. They have endured for so many years. They're like a long spring that has been pressed down to the bottom. Now that it has finally sprung up, even if Lamulin is a saint, he would also go crazy. Of course, this is only a temporary release. When he wakes up, he will definitely regret it." Just as Yang Tian finished speaking, he heard footsteps coming from the front. Chapter 706. Yang Tian didn't expect Black Talisman Lord to appear in front of him. He recognized Black Talisman Lord, but Black Talisman Lord didn't recognize him. However, when Black Talisman Lord saw the little blue dragon on Yang Tian's shoulder, his eyes widened in shock. The little blue dragon and Yang Tian left a deep impression on Black Talisman Lord. When he saw the little blue dragon, Black Talisman Lord was reminded of Yang Tian. Then Black Talisman Lord sized up Yang Tian. Although Yang Tian was only 12 or 13 years old, his facial features, nose, and mouth were 60 to 70% similar to an adult Yang Tian. Kuman couldn't tell because he didn't deliberately remember Yang Tian's appearance. However, Black Talisman Lord was different. Every time he thought of Yang Tian's appearance would appear clearly in his mind. Black Talisman Lord was sure that the young man in front of him was undoubtedly Yang Tian. Yang Tian, I didn't expect you to be here too. Black Talisman Lord smiled faintly. Black Talisman Lord used the language of the universe. He came from to test Luo Yunyang. Black Talisman Lord, is Lady Goddess doing well in the cold zone? Yang Tian nodded and replied in the language of the universe he came from. Yang Tian felt that there was no need to hide anything in front of Black Talisman Lord. It was indeed Yang Tian. Black Talisman Lord was pleasantly surprised. In this vast alien realm, Yang Tian and Black Talisman Lord were from the same place. When Yang Tian mentioned the cold zone, Black Talisman Lord was surprised. He was stunned for a moment before he asked, "How did you know?" Yang Tian chuckled and didn't answer the question. Instead, he asked, "You're here to see the natural talisman array, right?" Black Talisman Lord nodded and said, "Yes, if not for this, I would have already gone to the cloud region." Yang Tian, we all come from the same place. Lady Goddess thinks highly of you. If she knows about you, she will definitely be very happy. The two of them spoke in the language of their original world. Huey Meow Meow and Lama Wu, who was standing behind Black Talisman Lord, did not know what they were talking about. "Mui, has the seal been broken?" Lama Wu asked anxiously while Yang Tian and Black Talisman Lord were talking. Once the seal was broken, Lamulin immediately turned hostile. Even Lama Wu probably did not expect this. While talking to Black Talisman Lord, Yang Tian was constantly on guard against Lama Wu. Lama Wu was only a cultivator at the peak of the illusion realm and was no match for Yang Tian. As soon as he asked, Yang Tian replied with a smile, "The seal has been broken, but your patriarch has a conflict with the Ku barbarian minister and is fighting." When Lama Wu heard this, he immediately frowned. With a flash of his body, he rushed past Yang Tian and into the depths of the cave. "I did not expect you to break the seal. What a shame." After Lama Wu had left in a hurry, Black Talisman Lord looked into the depths of the cave and shook his head helplessly. What he felt was a shame was not that Yang Tian had beaten him to it, but that he did not get to see the seal's seal. For a cultivator of the Tao of Talismans, it was indeed a shame. Boom! The depths of the cave had been quiet for a while. Suddenly, the most violent sound came from below. At the same time, the entire cave shook as if there was an earthquake. After the loud sound, the cave fell into silence. "Shall we go and take a look?" After the silence, Black Talisman Lord looked at Yang Tian and asked with a smile. Yang Tian nodded. When Yang Tian and the others arrived at the original location of the seal, Ku Man and Lama Lan were no longer there. All that was left in the cave were the corpses of 7 elders from the Lama tribe. Yang Tian bent down and inspected the 7 corpses. He noticed that their organs had been shattered by a powerful force. Even their bones were shattered. "Ku Man, this woman is really powerful." Yang Tian could not help but exclaim in his mind. Yang Tian had just stood up when there was a ripple of runic energy coming from the depths of the cave. Yang Tian could feel it with his own body. Black Talisman Lord's black robe could also sense the runic energy. Both of them frowned at the same time, looked at each other, and quickly walked into the cave. After walking for less than 100 meters, there were 2 more corpses of elders from the Lama tribe. One of them was Lama Wu. Lama Wu had just separated from Yang Tian and the others. It seemed that Ku Man and Lama Lan had not been in there for long. Yang Tian immediately quickened his steps. Cough, cough. After walking for another 50 meters, there was a coughing sound coming from the front. Someone was still alive. After turning a corner, Yang Tian saw an elder named Lama Xing holding his chest and leaning against the cave wall. He kept on coughing. Every time he coughed, blood would come out from his mouth. It seemed that he was quite injured. When he saw Yang Tian, the elder's eyes beamed. "What happened?" Yang Tian immediately walked over and squatted down in front of Lama Xing and asked. Lama Xing took a deep breath and said, "Our tribe leader was defeated." Cough, cough. Before he could finish his sentence, Lama Xing began to cough again. Boom. Suddenly, there was another loud noise coming from inside. There was also a cry of pain. The injured Lama Xing could not help but become anxious. He grabbed Yang Tian's arm and said through gritted teeth, "Mui, help us kill Kuman. We will reward you handsomely." After saying that, Lama Xing's head fell to the side and he fainted. Yang Tian glanced at Lama Xing, then got up and walked inside. Black Talisman Lord, who was walking at the back, looked at the unconscious Lama Xing and smiled coldly. He raised his leg and kicked Lama Xing's temple, shattering his brain. When Yang Tian heard the commotion behind him, he only took a glance and then turned around and walked inside. Judging from the crazy words that Lama Lan had said, Yang Tian knew that the Lama tribe were not good people. After walking for a few more minutes, Yang Tian's eyes beamed as he turned around the corner. What appeared in front of him was a huge natural cave. The ceiling of the cave was filled with translucent, blue, crystal-like stalactites. They were pointed downwards and looked like sharp arrows. At the bottom of the cave, in the center, there was a large natural pool. There was an S-shaped island in the center. On top of the island, there was a bright sphere that was emitting a blue halo. The halo emitted by the sphere was sometimes strong and sometimes weak. It was as if it was breathing. The remaining 2 elders of the wood-pulling clan were also dead. Their corpses were right next to the entrance. One of them had half of his head smashed into pieces, while the other had been pierced through by a stalactite from the ceiling of the cave and was dangling in the air. Lama Lan and Kuman were both injured. They were facing each other on the S-shaped island. Both of them looked at each other with hatred. Yang Tian's arrival was naturally noticed by the two of them. For the two of them, this was a critical moment, and they could not afford to be distracted. The two of them only glanced at Yang Tian and the others. Although the two of them were breathing heavily, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Yang Tian was not afraid to step forward. Both he and Black Talisman Lord focused their attention on the blue light sphere floating in the air. This blue light sphere was about 5 meters in diameter. Not only was it flashing, but it was also moving up and down. When an ordinary person saw it, it was just a glowing sphere. However, Yang Tian and Black Talisman Lord could tell that this light sphere was not as simple as it seemed. Especially Yang Tian. Ever since he had the runic world within his body, he was even more sensitive to the runic energy. In his mind, a strange scene appeared. From this blue ball of light, there were countless rune energies of various colors that extended all the way to the cave wall and disappeared into it. And these runic energies were also flashing at the same frequency as the blue light sphere. When he saw this scene, Yang Tian thought of the word heart. The blue light sphere looked like a beating heart, and those invisible runic energies were like blood vessels. It looked like they were transferring energy to the blue light sphere. Pung! At this time, Kuman's palm landed on Lama Lan's chest, and there was a muffled sound. That palm strike sent Lama Lan flying and crashing into the blue light sphere. Kuman's combat power was slightly stronger than Lama Lan's. If it weren't for the fact that Lamu Lan's black robe was a powerful runic artifact that could negate part of Kuman's attack, he would have already been defeated. After sending Lamu Lan flying, Kuman did not let go of his opponent. He immediately rushed forward and aimed his palm at Lama Lan's head. It looked like Lama Lan was definitely going to die this time. But no one could be sure of anything in this world until the very end. When Lama Lan's body was only a few feet away from the blue light sphere, he suddenly stopped. At this time, Kuman had already unleashed another palm strike toward Lama Lan's head. Pung! There was a muffled sound. It was not the sound of Kuman's palm strike hitting Lama Lan. Instead, it was a powerful force that blocked Kuman's palm strike. Ha! Lamulin suddenly opened his mouth and laughed loudly. Chapter 707. Lamulin's expression was very arrogant. Seeing that his attack had failed, Kuman landed on the ground. He then jumped up again and unleashed a second palm strike at Lamulin. At this time, Lamulin had already stopped laughing. He waved his hand, and a blue light appeared in front of him as he waved his arm. Kuman's palm strike landed on the energy shield formed by the blue light. With a soft poof, this powerful palm strike was absorbed by the blue light. Kuman was shocked. After he landed on the ground, he retreated dozens of meters away with a cautious expression. Seeing Kuman's shocked expression, Lamulin chuckled and said, "Kuman, you can no longer defeat me. Even if your Grandmaster is here, he is no match for me. Once I have merged with the innate rune power, I will destroy the temple. I will do what I say." Fuse. After Lamulin finished speaking, he suddenly shouted and placed his hands in front of his chest. As his palms flashed, circles of rune energy were emitted from his hands. At the same time, the blue sphere behind him shone brightly. Kuman finally realized the danger he was in. His eyes were wide open, and a black spike suddenly appeared in his hand. This spike looked like a javelin. It was about 1 meter long and as thick as an adult's arm. As soon as it appeared, there was a powerful ripple of rune energy coming from it. This was a powerful talisman treasure. Die! With a cold shout, Kuman threw the spike at Lamulin. At this time, Kuman and Lamulin were dozens of meters away from each other. As soon as the spike flew out from Kuman's hand, it appeared in front of Lamulin's chest. Then there was a loud boom. Under the collision of the two tyrannical energies, a strong shock wave spread out in all directions. The entire cave trembled and rumbled. If Yang Tian was outside of Lamulin, he would be able to see that the entire mountain was shaking. Lamulin had always been stable. From the moment it appeared until now, nothing like this had ever happened before. All the cultivators who were touring the mountain were shocked and quickly ran away from Lamulin. Under his control, the Withered Barbarian's rune magic treasure was in a stalemate with the blue shield in front of Lamulin. The cave kept shaking. The collision just now created a strong shockwave that blew Yang Tian, Huey Meow Meow, and Black Talisman lured away. Fortunately, Yang Tian used his mental power to protect them in time, so they were not blown back to the cave they came from. The spike-like stalagmites above the cave were cut off one by one and fell to the ground in pieces, forming a thick layer. Cough, cough. After getting up from the ground, Black Talisman Lord deliberately coughed twice, but no one knew why. Kuman and Lamulin had long since known about the arrival of Yang Tian's group. However, the two of them had ignored them because the strength of Yang Tian's group was not enough to threaten them. After Black Talisman Lord coughed twice, while Lamulin and Kuman were fighting, they both looked at Yang Tian. When Black Talisman Lord saw the two of them looking at him, he raised his hand and a small beast that seemed to be made of ice appeared in his hand. This ice sculpture was also a rune magic treasure. As soon as it appeared, the temperature around it began to drop rapidly. At the same time, powerful rune energy waves were emitted from this ice sculpture. Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow were frozen by the cold air and took a few steps back. In an instant, Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow's eyebrows and hair were covered in ice. However, Black Talisman Lord, who was holding this rune magic treasure, was not affected at all. This is an ice elemental magic treasure. Kuman's eyes suddenly widened as he felt the temperature in the cave dropping rapidly. He was surprised. Black Talisman Lord smiled and said, "Sir, you are indeed knowledgeable. This is a rune magic treasure made with the ice elemental magic treasure." Previously, Black Talisman Lord had spoken to Yang Tian in the language of his previous world. Now, he was speaking to Kuman in the language of this world and seemed a little unfamiliar with it. Yang Tian deduced that Black Talisman Lord had not left the cold zone for long. Or perhaps, he rarely interacted with the outside world. Although Yang Tian was a little unhappy with Black Talisman Lord's sudden actions, he did not say anything. He held Huey Meow Meow's hand and watched quietly. In fact, Black Talisman Lord's impression of Yang Tian was still the same as before. In the previous world, Black Talisman Lord had used Yang Tian once. He could not help but feel a sense of superiority towards Yang Tian. However, He did not know that Yang Tian was now much stronger than he was. The cold zone's environment was harsh, but it produced many strange things. The ice elemental magic treasure was a special product of the cold zone. It existed in the ice layers thousands of meters below the ground. After hundreds of thousands of years, it was even harder than the metal used to make weapons. By carving runes on the ice elemental magic treasure, it could produce cold air. In a certain area, it could produce a power comparable to the white tide for a short period of time. This ice elemental magic treasure depicted the appearance of an ice beast roaring at the sky. Its entire body was carved with runes that could produce cold air. These runes were actually a type of 5 elemental magic treasure. Black Talisman Lord obviously had a motive for taking out this powerful rune magic treasure at this time. If you can help me kill him, I can give you the position of manager of the everlasting temple. Kuman suddenly laughed. He gritted his teeth and promised Black Talisman Lord. At this time, Kuman needed help. As the manager of the temple, she had the right to appoint a manager. Black Talisman Lord smiled and said, I have long wanted to become a member of the temple. Thank you, manager. Yang Tian frowned when he heard Black Talisman Lord's words. He didn't expect Black Talisman Lord to have such an idea. He was probably following Goddess Shi Qin's orders to enter the temple and obtain information about the temple. Although Yang Tian didn't spend much time with Goddess Shi Qin, he knew that Shi Qin Yu wasn't a woman who was content with peace. No matter where she went, she wouldn't submit to anyone. This had nothing to do with Yang Tian. Yang Tian turned around and gave Huey Meow Meow a look. The two slowly retreated again. Black Talisman Lord naturally noticed Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow's actions. However, to him, helping Kuman kill Lamulin was the most important thing. This was a good opportunity to enter the everlasting temple. He didn't want to complicate matters and ignored Yang Tian. Kuman and Black Talisman Lord had colluded with each other. For some reason, Lamulin didn't say anything when he saw this. He still had a crazy smile on his face. Something wasn't right. Yang Tian suddenly realized that Lamulin's smile seemed to have been frozen by time energy. Lamulin's power was obviously provided by the blue sphere behind him. No matter how hard Kuman tried to move the spike-shaped rune weapon, the rune weapon stopped a foot away from Lamulin. It was unable to move forward and was even forced to gradually retreat. After receiving Kuman's promise, Black Talisman Lord smiled and threw the ice essence weapon forward. What was strange was that the ice spirit treasure that had left Black Talisman Lord's hand became bigger and bigger as it flew in the air. Suddenly, it turned into an ice beast that was about 10 meters long. It let out a roar and pounced toward Lamulin. This ice beast wasn't a living creature. It was simulated using runic energy. As it grew bigger, the temperature in the cave dropped to a level that even Yang Tian couldn't bear, let alone Huey Meow Meow. Huey Meow Meow's body began to tremble. The pool under the blue sphere was instantly frozen. Yang Tian didn't want to miss out on such an exciting battle. Naturally, he wouldn't leave this place. He once again used his spiritual power to surround himself and Huey Meow Meow to isolate them from the cold. But what made Yang Tian feel strange was that Lamulin still didn't move. His expression didn't change. Actually, when Black Talisman Lord and Kuman were talking, Lamulin's body had already begun to change. The ice beast that was pouncing towards Lamulin arrived above Lamulin's head with lightning speed. It opened its mouth and bit towards Lamulin and the blue sphere. From the looks of it, this exotic beast looked like it could crush Lamulin and the strange blue sphere with a single bite. Bang! Unexpectedly, when the ice beast was less than 1 meter away from the blue sphere once again shone brightly. It unleashed a powerful runic energy and shattered the powerful ice beast. A series of pong 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 sounds were heard as the ice beast fell onto the ice below. Seeing this, Black Talisman Lord couldn't help but cry out in surprise. He didn't expect that the bejeweled ice elemental would be destroyed so easily. After all, this bejeweled ice elemental was something that they obtained when they were exterminating a frigid tribe. Because of this bejeweled ice elemental, they had lost many of their men. Ha ha! Once the bejeweled ice elemental was destroyed, Lamulin suddenly began to laugh wildly. Yang Tian once again looked at Lamulin and noticed that Lamulin's temperament was different from before. Yang Tian, do you still remember how your body was born? That blue sphere is the same. Suddenly, the strange program's voice rang in Yang Tian's mind. Yang Tian could not help but be startled. With the strange program's reminder, Yang Tian once again looked at the blue sphere. He felt that it was different now. The Talisman Lord was the first to arrive here. Then, it was very likely that the Talisman Lord was being born from this blood fetus. If this was true, then this blood fetus that was connected to the entire continent must have absorbed a lot of energy over the countless years. How powerful would the body that the Talisman Lord had created from it be? This thought flashed through Yang Tian's mind. However, this was just a guess. Yang Tian couldn't be sure. Yang Tian frowned as he weighed the pros and cons. After a short moment of consideration, he felt that no matter what, he couldn't allow the monster that was the Talisman Lord to appear. He was just an ordinary cultivator in this world with a bright future ahead of him. If a powerful being that even the gods couldn't defeat suddenly appeared, who knew what would happen to this world? Chapter 708. Kuman had not expected that the famous Dharma treasure of the Frost Domain, the Ice Spirit treasure, would be destroyed by Lamulin. Kuman, from now on, the entire continent, and even the entire world will be ruled by the Lama tribe. Ha ha! Looking at Kuman's shocked expression, Lamulan said and laughed crazily again. Humph! Kuman snorted in disdain at Lamulin's arrogance. In his opinion, Lamulin had really gone mad. The three sacred halls had existed in this world for countless years and had a strong foundation. Even a god would not dare to say such a thing, Lamulin said when she saw Kuman's disdainful expression. This natural talisman array is rooted in the entire continent and deep in the Star Sea. It is constantly absorbing the energy of this continent and the Star Sea. Can your sacred hall defeat such a force? Kuman and Black Talisman Lord were both shocked when they heard Lamulin's words. Kuman was shocked while Black Talisman Lord was extremely regretful. If what Lamulin said was true, then the Lamu clan would definitely become the new ruler of this continent in the future. It was unwise to become enemies with the Lamu clan at this moment. Shichen Yuyu's plan was to rely on the powerful forces of this world to continuously strengthen themselves and then replace them. Although Black Talisman Lord had not been in this world for long, he knew that they had an advantage over the cultivators of this world. Black Talisman Lord turned to look at Yang Tian. Yang Tian was frowning and looking at the blue sphere. He seemed to be deep in thought. No one knew what he was thinking. Talisman Lord, it's an honor to meet you. Black Talisman Lord had just shifted his gaze away from Yang Tian when Yang Tian suddenly spoke. Talisman Lord? Black Talisman Lord was stunned when he heard this. Black Talisman Lord was a cultivator of talisman arts. In his original world, the Talisman Lord was a godlike existence. When he heard Yang Tian say the words, Talisman Lord, he could not control his emotions no matter what. The Rune Lord's creation of a rune-programmed life form was simply a myth. No matter how hard the descendants tried, they did not know how he did it. Even the Black Talisman Lord had once tried to use runes to create a rune program with intelligence. However, he had wasted a lot of time and had no clue at all. In his original world, the Talisman Master had practically become the ancestor of all rune cultivators. Kuman clearly knew about the legend of the Talisman Master in the Lama tribe. It was said that the Talisman Master was a cultivator who used runes to the extreme. He was incomparably powerful, comparable to a god. At that time, if it hadn't suddenly disappeared, there might have been a fourth shrine on the continent by now. Ha ha! As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, Lamulin burst out laughing. The corners of Yang Tian's mouth curled up as he thought to himself, I guessed it right. The current Lamulin was no longer the Lamulin of the past. Inside Lamulin's body was the Talisman Lord's consciousness. After Lamulin finished laughing, She turned her head and looked at Yang Tian. I didn't expect a little kid like you to see through me. You and I came from the same place, right? The Talisman Master's question was undoubtedly a confirmation of Yang Tian's guess. Yang Tian nodded and pointed at the Black Talisman Lord. Him too. The Black Talisman Lord nodded at the Talisman Master. Talisman Master, I really want to know how you did it. Yang Tian rolled his eyes and asked curiously. The Talisman Master knew what Yang Tian was asking. Yang Tian had originally thought that the Talisman Master wouldn't answer. Unexpectedly, when Yang Tian asked this question, the Talisman Master replied, Muyi, you may not know this, but before I started cultivating, I was an ordinary technician. I was a programmer who wrote virtual games. When he heard the word programmer, Yang Tian felt a sense of familiarity. The Talisman Master continued, I didn't have any talent for cultivation. After a few hundred years, I still hadn't reached the star grade. Thus, I chose to cultivate runes, hoping to use the power of runes to change my situation. However, I still didn't have any talent for runes. As he said this, the Talisman Master fell silent. Under his control, a look of reminiscence appeared on Lamulin's face. That period of time must have been very difficult for the Talisman Master. Yang Tian had come from that world. Although his cultivation had been very smooth, he knew that most cultivators didn't have it easy. I originally wanted to give up. Suddenly, the Talisman Master spoke again. In my despair, I wanted to give up on cultivation, return to my hometown, and live an ordinary life. At that moment, a strange idea appeared in my mind. I thought that if I could use runes to write an intelligent program, I would be able to obtain rune energy indirectly with the help of this program. After I had this idea, I started to try it out. How is that possible? The Black Talisman Lord couldn't help but mutter to himself. The Black Talisman Lord had tried this before, but he hadn't even found the right way to do it. The Talisman Master chuckled. Nothing is impossible in this world. I was originally a programmer who wrote programs using numbers, so I naturally understand better than you how intelligent programs are created. You didn't succeed because you didn't understand the principle behind intelligent programs. Impossible, the Black Talisman Lord said. In order to create a rune program like you, I studied for 10 years. The Talisman Master laughed after the Black Talisman Lord finished speaking. The Black Talisman Lord frowned when he saw the Talisman Master laughing. Whether it was Yang Tian, the Talisman Master, or the Black Talisman Lord, they were all conversing in the language of this world. Kuman could hear them clearly. In this world, intelligent programs formed by numbers belong to the mechanical race. Kuman and Hueha Miao Miao didn't know much about them, so they were confused. The Talisman Master finished laughing and said, It's only been 10 years. Everyone has their own specialization. You didn't even study intelligent programs thoroughly. If I'm not wrong, you must have used a large amount of complicated runes to create a rune program, right? That's right. The Black Talisman Lord nodded. The more complicated the rune, the more information it contains. For example, a long paragraph written with simple runes can be replaced with a complicated rune. What's wrong with that? The Talisman Master said, Actually, you think of runes as too complicated. It's actually very simple. The process of its creation is just like the life in this world. At first, it's just a small cell. Then, it evolves into a more advanced and complicated life form. As long as it continues to evolve, it will become more and more advanced. There's no end to it. The Black Talisman Lord said, Of course, I've tried this method before, but I still failed. The Talisman Master laughed. Do you want to know how I did it? Yes. The Black Talisman Lord nodded. Yang Tian naturally wanted to know as well. His eyes widened when he heard the Talisman Master's words. The Talisman Master said, After countless attempts and failures, I found a representative rune from each type of rune. The total number doesn't exceed 100. I used less than 100 runes to create a rune program. Electronic programs need a hardware environment to run. Rune programs are different from electronic programs. Naturally, they need a unique environment to run. When Black Talisman Lord heard Talisman Lord's words, an excited expression appeared on his face. The Talisman Master's words made the Black Talisman Lord feel enlightened. Rune programs were different from numeric programs. Their operating environments were definitely different. Yang Tian thought to himself, when a Black Talisman Lord wanted to create a rune program, did he use the hardware of a digital program to run the rune program? That's too ridiculous. The Talisman Master ignored the Black Talisman Lord's excitement and said, the first thing I thought of was rune arrays. However, I wasn't proficient in runes. How could I create a rune array that would allow the rune program to run? The Talisman Master chuckled again. He seemed very pleased with himself. How did you do it? The Black Talisman Lord asked impatiently. He really wanted to know the result. However, the Talisman Master did not answer the Black Talisman Lord's question for a long time. Then, Yang Tian said, I know. You know? The Talisman Master controlled Lamulin's body and turned to look at Yang Tian. He asked with a smile. Yang Tian smiled and said, I was the one who broke the seal you set outside. Of course I know. Then tell me. The Talisman Master said. Yang Tian said, you found a natural rune array. Ha ha, that's right. The Talisman Master laughed and said, I spent 100 years and went through many hardships to find a natural rune array. Over there, I spent another 100 years carving runes on rocks, and drawing runes in the air with rune brushes. In the past 100 years, all the runes I carved and drew in the air with rune brushes were the dozens of typical runes. I don't even know how I persevered during that time. My perseverance was not in vain. During this process, the natural rune array's energy was absorbed by the runes I carved. They actually condensed into pure rune energy bodies. This was an unexpected gain. Yang Tian continued, therefore you carved a simple rune array on these rune energy bodies. Countless of these rune arrays collided with each other in the natural rune array, resulting in strange changes. Black Talisman Lord was very surprised and envious when Yang Tian described it. He was not surprised by the Talisman Master's genius idea, but by his perseverance. The year that the Talisman Master mentioned was the time it took for the Ketla star to orbit around a fixed star. If it were him, he would not have been able to persevere for so long, even if he had thought of this method. Actually, this was not strange. Those who were talented and accomplished in Rune Dao had superior lives. How could they have persevered for so long? When they cultivated Rune Dao, they paid more attention to their own realm. Cultivators who were not talented in Rune Dao, even if their perseverance was better than the Talisman Masters, would not dream of being able to create rune programs like the Talisman Master. In the process of creating rune programs, the Talisman Master was like a clumsy creator. He persevered and finally received his reward. Black Talisman Lord was envious that Yang Tian had seen the seal set by the Talisman Master. He thought that if he had encountered the seal, he would probably have been able to deduce the process of the Talisman Master's creation of rune programs, just like Yang Tian. Black Talisman Lord was very conceited when it came to Rune Dao. He did not expect that the Llama tribe would not be able to understand the mystery behind the seal after guarding it for so long. After Yang Tian finished speaking, the Talisman Master said, your guess is roughly the same. It's just that the details are slightly different. Actually, if I were to do it again, I'm not confident that I would succeed. Then why did you destroy the rune programs later on? Yang Tian asked again. This was something that Yang Tian could not understand. The Talisman Master said, after I succeeded, I came to this world and accidentally encountered the machine race. My existence was a threat to their survival. They implanted a strange digital life form in my body. After the Talisman Master finished speaking, Yang Tian roughly understood the entire process. The Talisman Master was overconfident and came to this world to be plotted against by the machine race. On the one hand, the machine race wanted to obtain the rune programs from the Talisman Master. On the other hand, they wanted to kill the Talisman Master. The Talisman Master had no choice but to return to his original world. Then, the Talisman Master, who was controlled by the digital life form, had no choice but to destroy his physical body and the rune programs he had created. This also explained why there were so many rune arrays in the machine race. The machine race's research on runes was not inferior to human cultivators. The Talisman Master made it sound simple, but the process must have been extremely complicated. Besides the machine race, there was also the vague shadow of the Realm Protector. At the thought of the Realm Protector, Yang Tian's mind was filled with the mysterious black-robed elder who was standing on a green bird. Yang Tian could not help but think that what he had seen and heard after coming to this world might only be the tip of the iceberg. Besides the vast continent, there was an even more vast sea of stars. Little kid, you are very smart. How about becoming my disciple? The Talisman Master suddenly said while everyone was silent due to shock. Yang Tian came to his senses and did not answer the question. Instead, he smiled and said, Talisman Master, don't you want to know how I broke the seal? The Talisman Master said, it has been too long. The seal's power is less than 1/10,000th of its original power. It is not difficult to break it. The Talisman Master's answer put Yang Tian at ease. He asked this because he wanted to test whether the Talisman Master had discovered the existence of the Strange Program. The Strange Program now was no longer the Rune Program that had followed the Talisman Master back then. Your physical body has been destroyed. How did you come here? Black Talisman Lord looked at the blue sphere and asked curiously. This is my secret, the Talisman Master said. Yang Tian could tell that the Talisman Master was probably going to create a new body from the blood fetus just like him. This concerned the Talisman Master's life and death, so the Talisman Master naturally would not answer. The silent Talisman Master emitted a strange rune energy fluctuation from his body. The energy was very weak. Neither Black Talisman Lord nor Yang Tian noticed it, but the Strange Program did. After being reminded by the Strange Program, Yang Tian was ready to make his move. While the Talisman Master was very powerful, Yang Tian did not want him to appear in this world again. The reason why the Talisman Master was so patient with Yang Tian and Black Talisman Lord was because he was trying to buy time. The first one to react was Kuman. She had been listening from the side. Because she was not well-versed in runes, she was not as surprised as Yang Tian and Black Talisman Lord. After the battle, just now, Kuman had realized that if she stayed here any longer, she might not be able to leave this place alive. While she had a bad temper, she was not an idiot. In a flash, Kuman rushed toward the entrance of the cave. Pung! But to her surprise, the entrance had been sealed by an invisible rune energy. Kuman crashed into the rune energy and was sent flying back. Ha ha! All of you will die. All of you will die. At this time, Lamulin began to laugh again and kept on shouting. Lamulin began to go berserk again. Yang Tian knew that this was because the Talisman Master had removed his control over Lamulin's body. The rune energy wave just now was created when the Talisman Master left Lamulin's body. Yang Tian now understood that not only was the Talisman Master absorbing a large amount of energy, he was also fusing with the rune energy. If he succeeded, then the Talisman Master would be able to control the rune energy at will. With just a thought, he could set up any rune array that he wanted. The reason why Lamulin was shouting that she wanted to kill everyone here was probably because of the Talisman Master's influence. Because Yang Tian and the others had interfered with the Talisman Master's rebirth. When the Talisman Master came out from the blue sphere, the first thing he would do was to kill them. That was why Yang Tian wanted to destroy the Talisman Master. The Talisman Master was buying time, and so was Yang Tian. Because in order to stop the Talisman Master, he needed the help of the Strange Program. And the Strange Program needed time to destroy the blue sphere. Talisman Master. Talisman Master, haha. Everything was ready. Yang Tian called out the Talisman Master's name loudly. However, what answered him was Lamulin's maniacal laughter. The Talisman Master's consciousness had retreated into the blue sphere. Crack! Suddenly, the blue sphere's light dimmed, and there was the sound of a shell breaking. At the same time, a crack appeared on the smooth surface of the blue sphere. They could not wait any longer. If they waited for the Talisman Master to break out of the shell, then it would be over. Go! Yang Tian shouted. The Strange Program flew out from Yang Tian's collar and rushed toward the blue sphere. In the blink of an eye, it surrounded the blue sphere and Lamulin. Under the control of the Strange Program, countless tiny particles formed two circles in the shape of a cross and revolved around the blue sphere at high speed. During this process, powerful rune energy was emitted from the two circles. Seeing this, Yang Tian could not help but clench his fists. Success or failure depended on the strange program. Of course, it also needed the cooperation of the little blue dragon. The Talisman Master was about to break out of the shell. In the blue sphere, his new body, which was made of rune energy, had already taken shape. He only needed one more step to break out of the shell. However, he could not take this crucial step no matter how hard he tried. At this time, the strange program had already cut off the external supply of rune energy to the Talisman Master. This blue sphere was where the Talisman Master built his body. At the same time, it was also where he was bound. Chapter 709. Mui, I'll kill you. The Talisman Master, who was trapped by the strange program, was enraged. His consciousness once again descended into Lamulin's body as he coldly threatened Yang Tian. The Talisman Master was about to succeed, but it was foiled by Yang Tian. If it were Yang Tian, he would also be infuriated. In the face of the Talisman Master's threat, Yang Tian clenched his fist and remained unmoved. Since he had already made his move, then he had to kill the Talisman Master completely. He could not let him come out alive. Boom, boom, boom. As soon as the Talisman Master finished speaking, there was a sudden explosion in the cavern. It was the sound of the invisible runic energy lines breaking. After cutting off the energy from the outside world and the Talisman Master, the huge amount of energy stagnated. The invisible runic energy lines could no longer withstand the energy transmitted. Boom! Lamulin, who was being controlled by the Talisman Master, raised his head and roared unwillingly. His body suddenly exploded and turned into a cloud of blood mist. Due to the binding of the strange program, the cloud of blood mist lingered on the blue sphere, turning it into a true blood fetus. After Lamulin's body exploded, the cracks on the outer shell of the blue sphere became smaller and smaller. Soon, they disappeared and it returned to its original appearance. At the same time, without the supply of energy from the outside world, it no longer floated in the air and fell. Boom! Before the sphere landed on the ground, it suddenly exploded with a loud bang. In the explosion, a huge amount of energy was released. Countless small particles controlled by the strange program dispersed in the explosion. Although the explosion was powerful, it could not destroy the runic energy. Soon, these small particles regrouped and returned to Yang Tian under the control of the strange program. At this time, the strange program had completed its first step. Logically speaking, the strange program was created by the Talisman Master. Yang Tian was also worried that the strange program would not use its full strength to deal with the Talisman Master. However, it seemed that the strange program did not feel anything for the Talisman Master. Yang Tian thought for a moment and understood. Although the strange program now was a part of the previous runic program, it did not retain any sense of loyalty to the Talisman Master. Legend had it that the strange program had self-destructed under the command of the Talisman Master. However, whether or not that was the truth, no one knew except for the Talisman Master. If it wasn't for the fact that time was of the essence, Yang Tian wouldn't want to drag things out any longer. He would have wanted to get to the bottom of this matter. Next, it was time to kill the Talisman Master. This matter would probably become an unsolvable mystery. After the blue sphere exploded, a 17 or 18-year-old boy with a pair of sunglasses jumped out. His figure moved, and he ran out of the cave. Kuman was constantly on guard against the blue sphere. When the blue sphere exploded, she was ready to make her move. When she saw the naked youth running away, she immediately chased after him. At this point, if the Talisman Master still did not come out of the blood fetus, he would be suffocated to death. The Talisman Lord that came out at this moment was like a premature baby. Although he had powerful energy, he was unable to control the energy in his body in a short period of time. His only choice was to flee as far as he could, and then find a place to hide and recuperate his body. At that time, no one on this continent would be his match unless a god appeared. Due to Yang Tian's interference, the Talisman Master's plan was not perfect. Even so, this body was much better than before. Originally, his lifespan was already up. Through a long period of deep sleep, it was equivalent to prolonging his life. There was more than one way out of this huge cave. The Talisman Master was a sly old fox. In order to prevent any accidents, he had already prepared an escape route. When the Talisman Master's figure rushed into an inconspicuous cave that was less than 3 meters in diameter, Man followed. However, she collided with the rune energy at the entrance of the cave and was bounced back with a pong sound. Man, who was stopped by the defensive rune array at the entrance of the cave, knew that if she didn't chase after the Talisman Master now and let him escape, he would soon become a great enemy of the temple. Although she had used up more than half of her energy, after being bounced back by the rune energy, she gritted her teeth and rushed towards the entrance of the cave again. At this moment, Man seemed particularly barbaric. It was as if she wanted to use brute force to break through the defensive rune array. Pong! Every time her body collided with the rune energy, there would be a loud pong sound. Every time she was bounced back, Man would find that the rune energy that was stopping her would become weaker. Pong! When Yang Tian, Huey Meow Meow, and Black Talisman Lord arrived, there was a loud noise. The rune array at the entrance of the cave had finally been broken by Man. Man only glanced at Yang Tian and the others behind her, and then immediately rushed into the cave. Yang Tian stopped at the entrance of the cave. Black Talisman Lord followed Man and rushed into the cave. Should we follow them? Huey Meow Meow looked at the immeasurably deep cave and asked Yang Tian. Xiaolong, go up and have a look. Yang Tian turned and said to the little blue dragon on his shoulder. The little blue dragon nodded and jumped up from Yang Tian's shoulder. It turned into a greenish-yellow light and entered the cave. Let's go, Yang Tian said. He grabbed Huey Meow Meow's hand and followed the little blue dragon into the cave. Rumble. As soon as Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow entered the cave began to shake violently. They could feel the rune energy ripples coming from behind them. This underground space was protected by an invisible natural rune array. Earlier, when Man and Lamulin were fighting against the 12 elders of the Llama tribe, they did not destroy the cave. Now that the blue sphere was destroyed, the natural rune array was also damaged. The rune energy was in a mess, and this place had lost the protection of the natural rune array. As Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow were rushing forward, a large amount of rocks began to fall from the cave. It seemed that the cave would soon collapse. Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow immediately increased their speed. At this time, if Yang Tian was outside, he would be able to see that the towering Llama Mountain began to shake and slowly tilt to one side. Llama Mountain was very famous in this land, and it was constantly being watched. News of its strange movements spread across the entire land at a speed faster than the speed of light. While Man did not have the time to report the situation to the temples, the 3 temples and the nearby families had already sent people over. The shaking of Llama Mountain became more and more intense. Finally, it could not hold on any longer and fell to one side. Boom! Llama Mountain that had been standing for so many years suddenly broke from the middle. Its huge body fell to the ground with a loud thud. Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow were at 1,000 meters below Llama Mountain. When half of Llama Mountain fell to the ground, the cave began to collapse. Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow had just seen a blue light in front of them when a giant boulder fell from the sky and blocked their path. The blue light seemed to be from a teleportation formation. Chapter 710. Boom! As soon as their path was blocked, there was a loud explosion as the rocks in front of them were blasted away. Next, the little blue dragon's giant head appeared. It was the little blue dragon that had knocked away the rocks and opened up the path. When the little blue dragon turned its head back, Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow quickly followed behind it. After walking for less than 100 meters, they arrived at the place where the blue light was coming from. It was indeed a teleportation formation. More than half of the underground cave had collapsed. But this part of the cave where the teleportation formation was located was protected by the power of the runes and was extremely sturdy. The little blue dragon transformed back into its miniature little blue dragon form and returned to Yang Tian's shoulder. It then told Yang Tian that Ku-Man and Black Talisman Lord had used this teleportation formation to leave. Without hesitation, Yang Tian pulled Huey Meow Meow and stepped onto the teleportation formation. After Llama Mountain had collapsed, the ground at the bottom of the mountain was still trembling. With Llama Mountain as the center, the ground within a radius of hundreds of miles slowly began to bulge. It looked like a giant beast was about to break out from the ground. Half of Llama Mountain continued to rise. In less than half an hour, it had returned to its original height, or even higher. Looking from afar, it looked like a broken sword that had just emerged from the ground. The cultivators that had made their way here looked at the majestic scene in front of them quietly. It had been a long time since something like this had happened on this continent. Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud explosion. The bulging Llama Mountain suddenly sank down, forming a bottomless hole that was hundreds of miles wide. Buzzing. Just as they were about to go and take a look, there was a buzzing sound coming from within the hole. Next, there was the sound of wind blowing. A powerful suction force came from within the hole as a large number of rocks and trees around the hole were sucked into it. It was as if they had fallen into a whirlpool as they spun in the air and fell into the depths of the hole. When the cultivators that were close to the hole saw what was happening, they could not help but quickly retreat in shock. Boom! 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 The airflow coming out of the cave was getting stronger and stronger, and the entrance became smoother and smoother. The area was also getting bigger and bigger, spreading out in all directions at an extremely fast speed. This terrifying scene made people think that if this cave was allowed to expand without limit, perhaps the entire continent would be destroyed. While many cultivators were trembling in fear, the cave began to change again. The speed of the airflow in the cave began to slow down. After less than an hour, it finally stopped. The airflow stopped, and what appeared before everyone's eyes was a large hole in the shape of a horn. The bolder cultivators cautiously walked to the edge of the cave and looked down. They couldn't help but widen their eyes. The airflow generated by the cave earlier had scraped the walls of the cave until they were extremely smooth. Thousands of meters below, there were layers upon layers of louse crystals. The louse crystal ores produced in the mines were in the form of granules. Because of the difference in density, there were also slight differences in color. Meanwhile, the louse crystal ore below was in large chunks, sparkling and translucent, looking extremely beautiful. The purple louse crystal vein stretched from several thousand meters down to the end of the horizon. As the saying goes, humans die in pursuit of wealth, and birds die in pursuit of food. Greed can help people overcome fear. Immediately, a large number of cultivators jumped down and slid down the walls of the cave. Ha! It really is louse crystals. So many louse crystals. The first cultivator who slid down to the louse crystal vein stabbed his blade into the wall and stopped. He looked at the purple louse crystal vein in front of him and laughed happily. No one expected that there would be such a large louse crystal vein at the bottom of Llama Mountain. Llama Mountain was the center of a natural talisman array. It was not strange that it could produce such a large amount of louse crystals. The first group of cultivators who slid down to the louse crystal vein took out their weapons and began to dig at the surface of the louse crystal vein. For a moment, the sound of clanking could be heard. Seeing this, the cultivators who were watching from the entrance of the cave could no longer hold it in and slid down the walls of the cave. A cave with a radius of several hundred kilometers could easily accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. Most of them went crazy, but there were still a few who remained calm. Even when they saw someone putting away the louse crystals into their interspatial tools, they were not moved. Buzz. Less than half an hour after the airflow stopped, suddenly, a buzzing sound came from the bottom of the cave again. Next, another powerful airflow appeared. The cultivators who were digging at the Laos crystal vein did not even have time to react before they were swept up by the airflow and fell to the bottom of the cave. The sound of the airflow completely covered the cries of pain. This time, the airflow that appeared out of nowhere swept away at least tens of thousands of people. The airflow in the cave continued for about half an hour before it stopped again. With the lesson from last time, no one dared to go down again. At this time, the people from the three temples took the opportunity to surround the cave and forbade anyone from going down. The reason given by the three temples was that the cave that appeared out of nowhere was very dangerous. Before they figured out what was going on, no one was allowed to enter. Of course, no one would be convinced by such a high-sounding reason. Everyone knew that the three temples must be after the Laos crystals in the cave. Almost all the benefits of the entire continent had been taken by the three temples. Even so, no one dared to voice their anger, and no one dared to use their actions to object. When the blue light disappeared, Yang Tian and the others had arrived at a place where the light was dim and they could not see the end of it. If it were not for the faint blue light above them, they would not be able to see their own fingers. Yang Tian held Huey Meow Meow's hand and looked around. Suddenly, Black Talisman Lord's voice sounded from the side, following which a bright light appeared in the direction of the voice. Black Talisman Lord held a glowing triangular object in his hand and walked quickly towards Yang Tian. When he heard Black Talisman Lord call him Yang Tian's heart tightened. If Kuman heard these two words, he would be in big trouble. Previously, when Kuman appeared, he already suspected Yang Tian's identity. If he heard Black Talisman Lord call Yang Tian, no matter how stupid Kuman was, he would know that he was fooled by Yang Tian's appearance. Luckily, it was only Black Talisman Lord who appeared. There was no trace of Kuman. Where are Talisman Lord and Kuman? When Black Talisman Lord walked in front of him, Yang Tian asked calmly. Black Talisman Lord shook his head. After I came here, I did not see them. This place is very strange. Look at the ground, and you will know. When Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow heard this, they looked down at their feet at the same time. It turned out that the ground was filled with red stripes. They were like tree roots and were extremely messy. At first glance, this was the case. However, if one looked closely, they would realize that these stripes seemed to follow a certain pattern. Black Talisman Lord squatted down and touched the red stripes. If I'm not wrong, these are the energy lines of a natural talisman array. Chapter 711. When he heard Black Talisman Lord's words, Yang Tian also crouched down and looked at the red lines on the ground curiously. Yang Tian had just reached out his hand to touch the runic lines when he heard a smack. Black Talisman Lord's hand was bounced away. Next, the red lines lit up and emitted a blood-red light. Black Talisman Lord gritted his teeth and rubbed his wrist. He looked like he was in pain. Yang Tian took a closer look at where Black Talisman Lord had touched. He noticed that the guy was itching and had cut open the transparent shell on the surface of the black lines. The red lines were like electric wires that conducted electricity. Black Talisman Lord had cut open the outer layer of insulation and was electrocuted. When the red lines lit up, the entire space was lit up. While there was plenty of light, Yang Tian could see that it was still pitch black. He could not see the end of it. However, he could vaguely see what was happening above him. It turned out that this was also a naturally formed cave. The ceiling was about 100 meters above the ground. But unlike the ground, the lines at the top were blue. After the red lines on the ground lit up, the countless blue lines on the ceiling lit up as well. As soon as the lines lit up, Yang Tian could feel the powerful runic energy. Compared to man-made runic arrays, the runic energy produced by these naturally formed runic arrays was more complex. Yang Tian could sense that there were more than 10 types of runic energy. The light of the runic energy lines continued to increase. In the end, the three of them had no choice but to close their eyes. When the runic energy lines had lit up to a certain level, the rumbling sound could be heard once more. The gigantic cave that seemed to have no end began to shake again. All three of them were cultivators and had sharp senses. They could clearly feel that they were ascending. At this time, Llama Mountain was ascending. Yang Tian and the others were at the bottom of Llama Mountain. They were not ascending very quickly. After about half an hour, they finally stopped. Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud noise. The cave began to shake, and they were descending quickly. As they were descending, the light of the runic energy lines began to dim. After a few minutes, they finally stopped. At this moment, a faint white light shone down from above. The three of them looked up and were surprised to find that there was a huge hole at the top of the cave. The pale white light was coming from this hole. Obviously, this light was natural light. Seeing the light shining down from the outside, Hui Meow Meow heaved a sigh of relief. Ever since the withered barbarian appeared, she had been reminding them to be scared out of their wits. Now, they could finally go out, right? Unexpectedly, at this moment, Black Talisman Lord muttered, "If we can't get out, we've long been trapped here." Yang Tian nodded and said, "I feel that the talisman has taken the initiative to tamper with the natural talisman array and made some changes." As soon as Yang Tian's voice fell, the rune energy line lit up again. At the same time, the light at the entrance of the cave dimmed, and the sand and stones around the entrance of the cave were suddenly rolled up, making a loud, buzzing sound. If one were to hear such a sound from the outside, they might not feel anything, but Yang Tian and the others were in a semi-enclosed space. As soon as the sound was heard, the three of them became dizzy and felt that the sound was getting stronger. The sound was obviously very destructive. Yang Tian quickly mobilized his mental power from the original realm to protect himself, Hui Meow Meow, and Black Talisman Lord. With the mental power protection, the strange and powerful sound wave could no longer harm the three of them. The swirling airflow above the cave spun faster and faster, making a whistling sound. The strange thing was that the airflow above did not affect the airflow inside the cave. It was as if there was a layer of energy separating the inside from the outside. What Yang Tian did not know was that there was a huge pit outside that had an opening that was hundreds of kilometers wide. The place where he was now was tens of thousands of meters above the ground. After the destructive sound wave disappeared, Black Talisman Lord took out the compass, which was used to check rune energy, from his storage bracelet. Seeing that the needle on the compass was spinning rapidly, Black Talisman Lord shook his head helplessly and kept the sophisticated tool in his storage space. The rune energy here was too messy, and Black Talisman Lord was at his wit's end. Yang Tian closed his eyes and carefully sensed the rune energy around him. A blurry image formed in his mind. They were enveloped by a rune energy that was about 100 meters in diameter. The rune energy was extremely chaotic. It was made up of tens of thousands of rune energy lines of different colors. It was like a huge, colorful cocoon that trapped Yang Tian and the rest here. Black Talisman Lord had arrived here before Yang Tian and the rest. He could not leave because he was blocked by the rune energy. As for Talisman Lord and Kuman, they had probably left before the rune formation was activated. Yang Tian only sensed the situation of the rune energy around him before he opened his eyes and looked up with a frown. Black Talisman Lord suddenly sprung up and threw a punch upward. The powerful punch was like a stone sinking into the sea. There was no reaction at all. The friction between the air currents and objects would also generate heat. Soon, Yang Tian and the rest sensed that the temperature in this space was rapidly rising. In less than 5 minutes, it had risen to more than 100 degrees. Ordinary people would not be able to survive in this temperature. A bad premonition appeared in the three of them. Huey Meow Meow did not understand rune formations. She was only worried that this was a killing formation. The general structure of this rune formation appeared in Yang Tian and Black Talisman Lord's minds at the same time. If the air currents above generated heat and transmitted it down, the rune formation would trap the heat and cause a high temperature in the area. They could not wait any longer. If they wanted to leave, they could only rely on the strange program. The strange program attached to Yang Tian's body had already been calculating the rune energy around them. After being able to control countless small particles, the strange program had a special physical body. Its calculation ability was even stronger. As soon as Yang Tian had the thought of leaving this place, the strange program immediately appeared and flew toward the left side of Yang Tian. Countless small particles formed the shape of a drill and flew very quickly. Black Talisman Lord was still worried. When he saw that Yang Tian was moving, he could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. The temperature was rising very quickly. The rocks that were being rubbed by the air currents were gradually turning red. If they waited any longer, they might be roasted alive. Before Yang Tian arrived, Black Talisman Lord had already touched the rune energy layer that surrounded them. After a simple inspection, he knew that he could not break it. Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow quickly followed behind the strange program. Black Talisman Lord quickly followed as well. There was a muffled sound. The strange program had created a large hole in the rune energy that surrounded Yang Tian. The three of them took the opportunity to rush out of the hole. Chapter 712. 2 chapters in 1. As soon as the three of them left the talisman array, a red ray of light shot down from the entrance above and shone on the ground. The temperature of the red ray was extremely high, and it was restrained by the rune energy. It was like a thick laser beam. Rumble. When the ray of light landed on the ground shook and started to melt. It turned into liquid and then into black gas. Pong, pong, pong. The melting ground made a series of noises at the same time. Because of the rune energy, it sounded very dull. This was obviously the sound of the rune energy lines on the ground being destroyed. Seeing this, the Black Talisman Lord was scared. If he had not left in time, he would have been burned to ashes by the red ray. The area that the red ray shone on was restrained by the rune energy. Most of the heat was gathered together, and the temperature was getting higher. The red ray of light was like a drill that kept going down. This talisman array system was obviously set up by the Talisman Lord. It seemed that the Talisman Lord wanted to use the heat to burn a deep hole in the ground. This kind of design was really amazing. First, the airflow would rotate rapidly to generate heat. Then, the heat would be gathered and transferred downwards. Then, a rune array was set up below to trap the heat and prevent it from dissipating. This way, as long as the airflow above continued to rotate, heat would be generated continuously and the temperature would get higher. Thinking of this, Yang Tian deduced that there must be something below the ground. The Talisman Lord must have built this talisman array system to melt a hole in the thing below. Yang Tian felt that the temperature produced by this talisman array system was even higher than the temperature produced by the flame array. Although the rune array system was powerful, there was a limit to how much it could withstand. When the temperature reached a certain level, the heat would cause the rune energy to change. Yang Tian could also feel the scorching energy while standing outside the rune array. As the three of them slowly retreated, the airflow above them finally stopped rotating. In the space surrounded by the rune energy, the black gas slowly dissipated and a huge hole with a diameter of more than 10 meters appeared. Let's go in and take a look. Yang Tian looked up and saw that the airflow had stopped rotating. He smiled at the Black Talisman Lord. Go in and take a look? The Black Talisman Lord was still fearful of what had happened earlier. After Yang Tian said that, the Black Talisman Lord looked deeply at Yang Tian and nodded. After entering the center of the talisman array again, Yang Tian immediately formed a shield with his mental power to protect himself, Huey Meow Meow, and the Black Talisman Lord. Although the airflow above them and the red light had disappeared, the temperature was more than 1,000 degrees. If not for the heat from above, the temperature would have been higher. Yang Tian came to the edge of the hole and looked down. The cave beneath his feet was pitch black. Yang Tian took out a green stone from his storage bracelet and threw it into the cave. After a second, the sound of the blue stone falling to the ground could be heard. And there must be something down here. I wonder what it is. The Black Talisman Lord mumbled with a frown as he looked at the hole that had been burned. Then, He looked up and turned to Yang Tian. This place is too strange. We'd better leave. It was not difficult for Yang Tian to leave this place. The light from above was an exit. All he had to do was to break through a few layers of talisman arrays. However, if he left now, he would not be able to get answers to many questions. Moreover, if he did not kill the Talisman Lord this time, he might not have another chance. If it were not for the fact that he was not sure when the formation would be activated again, Yang Tian would have gone down to the hole to take a look. The Talisman Array was activated again. The three of them left the area covered by the Talisman Array's energy. Just as Yang Tian expected, the rapidly rotating airflow once again produced high temperatures. A red light shone into the hole that was hundreds of meters deep. Through the activation and stopping of the Talisman Array, Yang Tian estimated that the Talisman Array would last for about half an hour after it was activated. After it stopped, it would cool down for the same amount of time. Yang Tian sat down on the ground. He planned to wait until the Talisman Array was deep enough to reveal what was underground. Anything that could catch the Talisman Lords, I would definitely be something extraordinary. Yang Tian, I'm curious. How did you come to this world? After Yang Tian sat down, the Black Talisman Lord also sat down. He looked at Yang Tian's face and asked calmly. Yang Tian smiled. I stayed in that sealed space for so long that I already knew the blueprint of the Wei-Kong spaceship. After you left, I made a copy of it. In truth, the Black Talisman Lord had already guessed it. He only asked that to start conversation. When Yang Tian said that, he did not look surprised at all. As soon as Yang Tian finished his sentence, the Black Talisman Lord said, "This world is not what we think it is." What do you mean? The Black Talisman Lord's words piqued Yang Tian's interest. After coming to this world, Yang Tian only had a rough idea of what this world was like. The Black Talisman Lord took out a talisman and drew two concentric circles on the ground. Then, he pointed at the center circle and said to Yang Tian, "This is the world we are in now. Outside is the universe we originally lived in. The structure of this world in the middle is actually the simplest. As for the world outside," at this point, the Black Talisman Lord frowned and paused. "What's wrong?" Yang Tian asked. The Black Talisman Lord said, "The universe outside should be a two-layered space. It contains countless small universes, and we came from one of these small universes." "How'd you know?" After the Black Talisman Lord finished speaking, Yang Tian asked curiously. The Black Talisman Lord said, "This is a guess of the goddess. She also said that some of the small universes outside are naturally formed in constant bubble space. Some are energy worlds created by cultivators, and some are storage spaces." The Black Talisman Lord had drawn two concentric circles, but in reality, the two universes were three-dimensional spheres. In other words, regardless of whether it was the outer space or the inner space, they were all connected through space energy. This also explained why the storage tools in the original world could be used in this world as well. "Are you sure?" Yang Tian asked after the Black Talisman Lord finished speaking. The two of them were speaking in the language of this world, and Huey Meow Meow could naturally hear them clearly. As a native of this world, Huey Meow Meow found it hard to understand. The Black Talisman Lord paused for a moment in response to Yang Tian's question and said, "It's just a guess. However, I feel that this guess is close to the truth." Yang Tian smiled and said, "I was afraid that you would say that this world is fake and that we are all living in a virtual world." It was no wonder that Yang Tian would think so. After all, he had seen the virtual world of the machine race. The Black Talisman Lord smiled and said, "Of course not. This is a real world, and it is easy to distinguish. Runes cannot be used in a virtual world." Yang Tian agreed with this point. "How did Hulua Yangli come to our original world?" Yang Tian asked again. Yang Tian believed that the Black Talisman Lord was Shi Chun Yuyu's trusted aide and should know something about this. This should be Shi Chun Yuyu's second time in this world. She must have more information in this area than Yang Tian. The Black Talisman Lord did not disappoint Yang Tian and said, "Hulua Yangli is only an ordinary cultivator in this world. His realm is only at the peak of the illusion realm. You may not know this, but the spatial barrier to the outside world is not always closed. According to my speculation, at the edge of this continent or in the star sea, spatial passageways will form from time to time. They will only be open for a short period of time. If someone encounters them, they can enter and exit through the spatial passageways. The spatial passageway we came from should be constantly moving. Therefore, you appeared in a different place from us in this world. Then there was another problem. Yang Tian asked again, "We only brought the Divine Lady to this world. How did the Divine Lady return?" The Black Talisman Lord said, "I have never thought about this question. However, if the speed of time in this world is different from the outside world, this situation might happen. When I return, I will definitely ask the Divine Lady for advice." Yang Tian thought that if this was the case, then Shi Yu must have stayed in this world for a very short period of time. However, after returning, she realized a long time had passed in the original world. Thinking of this problem, Yang Tian could not help but wonder if many years had passed in the original world. In that case, the great priests of the Superstar Divinity Temple might arrive soon. This thought made Yang Tian happy. Seeing the smile on Yang Tian's face, the Black Talisman Lord said, "There is one more thing you may not know. That is, this world is much more stable than our original universe." As he spoke, the Black Talisman Lord drew a circle in the air with his talisman pen. A blue bubble emerged from the tip of the pen. After this bubble left the tip of the pen, it exploded with a pop. Although the Black Talisman Lord's words seemed to be true, Yang Tian could not completely believe it. He thought that he would only understand these secrets after cultivating to the God realm. Qin Fei had been in this world, known as the Tomb of the Gods, for some time. She did not expect that there would be such a beautiful place in this gloomy world. This was the paradise that the defeated gods had created in this world with their powerful strength and the combination of the array glyphs. Compared to the realm of the gods of this world were more like humans and not cold gods. This paradise was a square with a diameter of about 1,000 kilometers. A giant tree grew in the center. Millions of Protoss lived in this paradise, and they relied on this giant tree to survive. This tree looked similar to the banyan trees that grew on Earth. It occupied most of the space in the paradise, and there were eggplant-shaped green fruits growing on the tree. When Qin Fei was still a divine lady, she had heard of the Tree of World. She thought that this giant tree was most likely the Tree of World. Although there was enough food, the gods living here were not so comfortable. The divine lady's task was to protect the giant tree because insects would grow on the tree. These insects were milky white and were called soul puppets. They were shaped like silkworms and were about 1 meter long. They lived by sucking the sap of the giant tree and were delicious food when roasted. Soul puppets were constantly produced on the giant tree. If the number of soul puppets was not controlled, the giant tree would soon be sucked dry of sap and die. This task was easy because soul puppets did not have much attack power. They could be killed by piercing their heads with a metal rod. It was just that soul puppets moved very fast. After Qin Fei was sent here, she was responsible for guarding a branch of the giant tree for a set time. On a branch of the giant tree that was several meters in diameter, Qin Fei saw a soul puppet crawling over quickly. She stabbed the black metal rod in her hand at the side of her foot. This was a soul puppet that had slipped through the net. With a chi sound, the black metal rod in Qin Fei's hand pierced into its head. After the black metal rod was pulled out of the soul puppet's head, the soul puppet fell down and was caught by a 12 or a 13-year-old girl. The soul puppets that were killed could not be eaten. They would be dried, ground into powder, and cooked with water. It would also be delicious worm porridge. The giant tree was very big. At the same time, there were tens of thousands of women and children working on it. Soul puppets fell down like raindrops. Compared to when she was a divine servant in the divine realm, Qin Fei's days were very easy. Xiao Fei, Xiao Fei. Qin Fei was focused on patrolling her area when she heard someone calling her from below. The voice sounded a little anxious. Qin Fei looked down and saw a middle-aged woman waving at her. When she saw Qin Fei, she said loudly, "Black Star is seriously injured." He wants to see you. When Qin Fei heard that Black Star was injured, she could not help but be shocked. White wings immediately appeared on her back, making her look like an angel. Qin Fei spread her wings and flew down the tree. Black Star was one of the two people who had discovered Qin Fei and brought her here. He had taken her as his adopted daughter. A woman's job was easy, but it was different for a man. Outside the paradise, there was a large number of undead. If the undead were not killed, they would gather more and eventually threaten the paradise. Black Star was a warrior and often went out to hunt the undead. In a short time that Qin Fei had been here, Black Star had already been injured twice. After flying at high speed for less than 5 minutes, Qin Fei arrived at the hospital that specialized in treating the injured. Black Star had just been sent here. He was lying on a simple stone bed with blood all over his body. He had already fainted. When Qin Fei arrived, she saw a medical staff shaking his head at a middle-aged man who was covered in wounds. The meaning was obvious. Black Star could not be saved. This middle-aged man, covered in wounds, was a warrior who had gone out at the same time as Black Star. When he heard that Black Star could not be saved, he could not help but sigh sadly. Even the god race would die in the process. Chapter 713. Perhaps because he felt Qin Fei's arrival, Black Star suddenly opened his eyes. "Father!" Qin Fei called out and quickly walked forward. Black Star smiled and said, Fei, Father can't take care of you anymore. I can't see that kid you mentioned." "Father." Just as Black Star said this, there was a cry of surprise. A 12 or 13-year-old boy ran over. This was Black Star's son, Qi Yuan. As soon as Qi Yuan arrived, Black Star's wife and 3 concubines also quickly walked over. Black Star's wife was called Lvu. She was dissatisfied with Qin Fei. After arriving, she pushed Qin Fei away. Her eyes turned red, and she started crying. For a moment, the place was filled with the sobbing of women. "Huh!" Black Star laughed and closed his eyes. The life aura emitted from his body became weaker and weaker. In this paradise, although the hierarchy was not as strict as in the Divine Dominion, the status of women was lower than that of men. Because men had to go out to fight, the mortality rate was extremely high, resulting in an obvious imbalance between men and women. At the same time, the fertility rate of the god race was also very low. A woman could only give birth to 2 or 3 children in her lifetime. In order to increase the population, there is a strict rule that once a woman reached adulthood, she had to find a man to marry. Qin Fei was obviously an adult woman. If Black Star died, there would be no one to protect her, and Qin Fei would be forced to marry. This was obviously something Qin Fei could not accept. During the time Qin Fei was here, many people had proposed marriage to Black Star because Qin Fei was extremely beautiful. However, Black Star had rejected them all. Black Star knew that Qin Fei was waiting for a man called Yang Tian. The sobbing lasted for less than 5 minutes before it gradually subsided. Black Star's wife and concubines wiped their tears. What awaited them was to remarry. The one who could inherit Black Star's assets was Black Star's son, Qi Yuan. Perhaps because they were used to death, the god race here would not be sad for long. "No, father will not die." Black Star's wife, Lvu, wiped her tears. Just as she was about to arrange Black Star's burial, Qin Fei suddenly spoke. The teammate who came back with Black Star was called Shi Wei. He shook his head helplessly. The dead could not be revived, and it was the same for gods. Although they called themselves God Race, they all knew that they were just a life form that was one level higher than humans. In the divine domain, it was still possible to revive, but not here because this was the divine tomb world. At this moment, the life force in Black Star's body had completely disappeared. Next, Black Star's corpse would be buried under the giant tree and become its nourishment. It was already considered good that Black Star could return to paradise alive. Shi Wei shook his head and turned around, wanting to leave. But as soon as he took a step forward, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. This was because he sensed a powerful life force behind him. This kind of life aura was full of vitality, and it was actually not weaker than a giant tree. Shi Wei turned around abruptly and saw a pair of pure white wings spread out behind Qin Fei's back. A red mole appeared between her eyebrows, and her entire body exuded a sacred and inviolable aura. Trapped in this world, the godhead of the god race had long been hidden. After several generations of inheritance, very few people were able to stimulate the godhead. Qin Fei's current appearance was something that would only appear when a god had awakened. Shi Wei's eyes widened, and he was stunned for a moment. With a plop, he knelt in front of Qin Fei. The surrounding medical staff, Black Star's wife and Black Star's son, Qi Yuan, saw Shi Wei kneeling in front of Qin Fei. They immediately reacted and knelt in front of Qin Fei. Qin Fei ignored these people. At this moment, her attention was completely focused on Black Star. In the eyes of Shi Wei and the others, Black Star was dead, but in Qin Fei's eyes, there was a special energy gathering between Black Star's eyebrows. This energy was Black Star's consciousness. After the physical body died, it could no longer carry consciousness. Not long after, Black Star's consciousness would dissipate. Qin Fei did not want Black Star to die. She slowly stretched out her jade-white left hand and covered Black Star's forehead. The special energy was emitted from Qin Fei's hand and passed into Black Star's body. At this moment, one could see that Qin Fei's left palm was faintly emitting a green halo. In the process of treating Black Star, the life force emitted from Qin Fei's body became stronger. When Shi Wei saw this situation, he suddenly remembered the description of life force that the elders in the clan had. The energy that Qin Fei used at this moment was obviously life force. Under the nourishment of life force, Black Star, who had just died, the death aura in his body began to dissipate. A moment later, life force appeared in his body. Black Star was alive. Black Star was a powerful warrior in the clan. His body was full of energy. The reason why he died was because in the process of fighting with the undead, the power of the undead invaded his body. The power of the undead was the opposite of life force. It was called death aura. As long as the death aura in Black Star's body was expelled, with his strong physical body, Black Star would be able to recover quickly. Life energy and death chi were supposed to restrain each other. In this paradise, people like Qin Fei who could expel the death chi had long ceased to exist. Seeing that Qin Fei could expel the death aura, Shi Wei was so excited that his body could not help but tremble. Tears even flowed out. After so many years, they finally had the hope of rising. Keek keek, a series of dense gurgling sounds could be heard. It sounded like countless insects with hard legs crawling on the ground. Yang Tian and Black Talisman Lord immediately stood up and looked in the direction of sound. This space was very big. As the light was dim, they could not see the end. After coming here, they had not properly explored it. The two of them felt that there would definitely be danger here. The Talisman Lord would definitely not allow anyone to destroy this place. As expected, danger came. What appeared in front of Yang Tian and Black Star's eyes were rune mechanical beasts that looked like spiders. Each of them was only the size of a millstone. They were as black as ink and emitted a cold metallic luster. These rune mechanical beasts looked very similar to the rune mechanical beasts that Yang Tian had seen in the Wei Kong warship in the sealed space. These black rune mechanical beasts were obviously much more powerful than the rune mechanical beasts in the Wei Kong warship. This could be seen from their outer shell. These rune mechanical beasts were actually made of metal extracted from star rocks. The densely packed rune mechanical beasts rushed over like a tide and quickly surrounded Yang Tian and Black Star. As the light was dim, it was impossible to estimate how many mechanical beasts there were. The three of them and one dragon were ready to fight at any time. Suddenly, the mechanical beasts separated, and a mechanical beast that was twice the size of the other mechanical beasts slowly crawled out. Chapter 714. The Talisman Lord, who had disappeared not long ago, was standing on the back of this mechanical beast. Compared to when he fled previously, the Talisman Lord's appearance had changed slightly. He had become much more mature than before and looked like a 15 or 16-year-old youth. The Talisman Lord had slept for an extremely long time in the blue blood fetus and absorbed an unknown amount of energy. Logically speaking, even if it was destroyed by Yang Tian at the last moment, his realm should not be low. However, the Talisman Lord was only at the peak of the illusion realm. This made Yang Tian feel very strange. After the Talisman Lord appeared, he had been staring at Yang Tian. If not for Yang Tian, the Talisman Lord's plan would have been perfect. But now, he had to spend a lot of effort to complete the plan. The Talisman Lord naturally knew the principles of this world better than Yang Tian. Nothing perfect could exist. An invisible force had used Yang Tian's hand to ruin his plan. Although he understood this, the Talisman Lord still hated Yang Tian very much. If he was about to become the most powerful god in this world, then Yang Tian would be his nemesis. The cycle of karma. A large part of the reason why Yang Tian could come to this point was because of the Talisman Lord. Now, it was time for karma to end. In his heart, Yang Tian actually admired the Talisman Lord very much. If it were him, he probably would not be able to endure staying in one place to draw runes for more than 100 years. The Talisman Lord was not easy to deal with. Although the Talisman Lord hated Yang Tian, he did not let the mechanical beast attack Yang Tian the moment he appeared. This was because even with the mechanical beast, the Talisman Lord was not confident of defeating Yang Tian and the other two. In fact, the biggest reason was that the Talisman Lord saw something familiar in Yang Tian. The rune program had already been destroyed, and the rune master was confident that no one other than him could create a rune program no matter how big the world was or how many geniuses there were. Therefore, he did not think that the strange program that had appeared before was actually an evolution of a segment of the rune program. Therefore, even though the rune master sensed a familiar aura, he only felt that the strange program was just a powerful runic treasure that Yang Tian possessed. Where is Kuman? Black Talisman Lord looked at the Talisman Lord and asked curiously. Black Talisman Lord seemed to be muttering to himself or asking the Talisman Lord. Talisman Master smiled and said, "That old fellow has been trapped by me. He won't be coming out anytime soon." Yang Tian had been sizing up the Talisman Lord for a while. At this moment, he suddenly smiled and said, "The Talisman Lord's perseverance is truly astonishing. You actually used a few years to create so many rune mechanical beasts." Yang Tian's words were just a test. Unexpectedly, the Talisman Lord nodded and said, "You guessed right. I've actually left you for a few years." Yang Tian had also come out of blood fetus. The process of rebirth was actually similar to the Talisman Lord's. Yang Tian guessed that such a body would need to experience a period of time before it could grow. To achieve such an effect, one would need to stay in a time rune array for a period of time. For example, one would need to accelerate the flow of time in a certain area. After the Talisman Lord's straightforward answer, Yang Tian asked again, "What exactly do you want to do?" In response to Yang Tian's question, the Talisman Lord lifted a finger and pointed at the rune array system that was drilled into the hole behind Yang Tian. He smiled and said, "Are you talking about this or my entire plan?" Yang Tian said, "Neither of us can beat the other now. Even if we fight, the outcome will not be decided in a short time. Since both of us want to stall for time, let's have a good chat. I want to know your entire plan, including the rune array next to you." The Talisman Lord was infuriated at the mention of this. This was because if Yang Tian had not ruined it at the last moment, he would have become the most powerful existence in this world. Why would he waste his breath with Yang Tian here? The Talisman Lord was a proud person. He knew that even if he spoke of his plan, others would not be able to replicate it, much less destroy it. Hence, he smiled and nodded. "Actually, there's nothing to hide. I came to this world a long time ago. When I first arrived, I experienced many hardships. If not for the existence of Little Talisman, I would have been destroyed long ago." Little Talisman? Yang Tian was puzzled. This sounded like the Talisman Lord smiled and said, "You guessed right. Little Talisman is also a rune program that I created. It's the second generation. Although it's much simpler, its functions can't compare to the first generation. The rune program is so powerful and perfect. How could I let it be destroyed? Before the first generation was destroyed, I had already created the second generation as a backup. This was something that Yang Tian understood very well. He was a programmer. He always liked to make backups. At this point, the Talisman Lord paused for a moment before saying, "Actually, the destruction of the first generation little talisman was beneficial to me. This was because I was about to lose control of it. If I didn't destroy it, the entire universe, and even me, would eventually fall under its control." These words made Yang Tian understand that the Talisman Lord was a person with a strong desire for control. The rune program was created by him, so it was natural that it would be influenced by his personality. It was inevitable that he would lose control. What happened after that? Yang Tian asked again. After that, the Talisman Lord recalled for a moment before saying, "I was seriously injured and my body could not recover. At the same time, my lifespan was about to end. You should understand that this is not only the lifespan of the physical body, but also the lifespan of the consciousness." They were all cultivators, so they naturally understood that to survive in this world, what controlled the lifespan was not the death of the physical body, but the consciousness. In other words, the soul. If the physical body was injured, it could be replicated or even modified through technological means. However, if the soul's lifespan was up, it would be troublesome, unless they could increase their cultivation before the lifespan of the soul was up. Black Talisman Lord was shocked as he looked at the Talisman Lord and said, "You should have died, but you are still alive. This must have something to do with this natural rune, right?" The Talisman Lord nodded and said, "Of course. If it were not for this natural rune, I would have died a long time ago. In this world, no one knows more about natural rune arrays than I do. Only a natural rune array can prevent my consciousness from dissipating and allow me to exist for a long time. Other than this, you might not know this, but because of this I have already absorbed the secrets of this world in my memory. Speaking of which, not even the gods and the divine dominion can compare to me. Next, as long as I complete the rest of the process, I will be able to surpass the gods and become the most powerful being in this world." After you have achieved your goal, what do you want to do? Yang Tian suddenly asked. The Talisman Lord chuckled and said, "Of course, I want to rebuild this world. I want to make this world a better place." What the Talisman Lord wanted to do was something that not even the gods in the divine dominion could do. That also meant that those so-called gods were not gods at all. They were just life forms of a higher level. Boom! As soon as the Talisman Lord had finished speaking, there was a muffled sound from the ground, as if something had exploded. Strangely, there was only a loud sound, but the ground did not shake. Chapter 7:15. Ha! I finally broke through. Hearing the tremors coming from the ground, Talisman Master's face lit up with excitement as he laughed. Yang Tian turned around and looked at the big hole that was burned. At this moment, the invisible rune energy had disappeared. Although the airflow above was still spinning rapidly, the high temperature was no longer transmitted down. "Go!" The Talisman Master looked at Yang Tian and suddenly shouted. With that, he moved and dashed toward the hole that was still emitting green smoke. The Talisman Master was very fast, and suddenly, before Yang Tian and the Black Talisman Lord could react, the Talisman Master had already jumped into the hole. At the same time, a large number of rune mechanical beasts pounced toward Yang Tian and the rest. Although these rune mechanical beasts were tough, it was impossible for them to defeat Yang Tian and the rest. The Talisman Master had created these rune mechanical beasts mainly to stop Yang Tian and the rest. After the Talisman Master had entered the hole, a portion of the rune mechanical beasts pounced toward Yang Tian and the rest while the rest blocked the hole. These lifeless beasts moved at an astonishing speed. It looked like they had teleported. Obviously, they had used the space rune energy. Yang Tian and the rest could not immediately chase after the Talisman Master, but the little blue dragon could. The little blue dragon's body was small, and its flying speed was fast. It should not have any problem passing through the gaps between the rune mechanical beasts. "Xiaolong, go and take a look," Yang Tian immediately said to the little blue dragon as he dodged the attack of a rune mechanical beast. The battle had come suddenly. The little blue dragon's eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight. It was about to transform into a giant dragon when it heard Yang Tian's order. The little blue dragon did not hesitate and immediately jumped up from Yang Tian's shoulder. It turned into a green shadow and dashed into the hole. Yang Tian, the Black Talisman Lord, and Hueha and Miao Miao were already on guard against the Talisman Master. The three of them instinctively stood back to back and blocked the attacks of the rune mechanical beasts. These rune mechanical beasts were much more sophisticated than the ones that Yang Tian had seen on the Wei Kong warship. Although they were lifeless, they had simple thinking abilities and were not inferior to powerful exotic beasts. Moreover, these beasts had different types of rune energy on their bodies. Chila! Boom! Suddenly, a white lightning as thick as an arm shot out from one of the rune mechanical beasts that pounced toward the Black Talisman Lord. The Black Talisman was shocked. The electric current was not strong, but it caused Black Talisman Lord to tremble. If Yang Tian had not used the red saber to block the attack of the rune mechanical beast, his life would have been over. There was also a portion of the runic mechanical beast that could shoot out flames, and a portion that could shoot out cold air. Under the effect of the runic energy, these runic mechanical beasts had many inconceivable abilities. In order to block the attacks of the rune mechanical beasts, the three of them focused their energy and did not dare to relax. Hueha and Miao Miao were the weakest among the three of them. However, the black whip in her hand was extremely agile. It was like a swift and violent poisonous snake. Every time she swung her whip, she would send a rune mechanical beast flying. In terms of combat skills, Hueha and Miao Miao seemed to be more experienced than the Black Talisman Lord. After getting rid of the lightning in his body, the Black Talisman Lord looked at Yang Tian gratefully and went back to the battle. The Black Talisman Lord did not have powerful combat skills. However, he had extraordinary attainments in runes. Otherwise, he would not have been able to break through the 5 rune arrays of the Lamu tribe in such a short period of time. He held a rune weapon in the shape of a compass in his hand and kept moving the needle on it. Streaks of invisible rune energy were released from it and sent the rune mechanical beasts flying. Yang Tian held the red saber in his hand and slashed rapidly. The rune mechanical beasts could not hurt him for the time being. However, there were too many rune mechanical beasts. Their outer shells, which were made of metal extracted from star stones, made them extremely sturdy and difficult to destroy. Of course, although these rune mechanical beasts looked powerful, they actually had their weaknesses. While Yang Tian and the Talisman Lord were chatting, the strange program had gathered enough information to calculate the weaknesses of the rune mechanical beasts. However, the weakness of the mechanical beasts was their abdomen, which was only the size of a fist. Furthermore, these things moved very quickly. It was very difficult to use physical attacks to hit their weak spots. Therefore, they had to use another method to kill these rune mechanical beasts in batches. Chi! Boom! Yang Tian took advantage of this short gap and swung his saber forward forcefully. The red wind saber released shook off more than 10 rune mechanical beasts in front of him. Protect me. I'll kill them. After stabbing the saber into the ground, Yang Tian said as he raised both his hands. His 10 fingers trembled and his palms formed many afterimages. Rings of rune energy were emitted from Yang Tian's hands. These rune mechanical beasts were all driven by rune energy. Once the rune arrays in their bodies were destroyed, they were no different from a pile of scrap metal. The rune energy emitted from Yang Tian's hands spread out in all directions with Yang Tian as the center. All the mechanical beasts that came into contact with the rune energy felt their legs go soft and their stomachs hit the ground. Then they stopped moving. These rune mechanical beasts were good things for Yang Tian. Yang Tian raised both his hands and put thousands of rune mechanical beasts into his storage bracelet. The Black Talisman Lord also understood the value of these rune mechanical beasts. When he saw Yang Tian put away the rune mechanical beasts, his eyes lit up, and he also put away a portion of them. Yang Tian was worried about the little blue dragon's safety. After killing these rune mechanical beasts, he only delayed for a few seconds before he turned and ran toward the cave. He jumped into the cave without hesitation. Looking down from above, the cave was still pitch black, and he couldn't see the bottom. Even so, it wasn't very deep. Yang Tian and the little blue dragon were telepathically connected. He could clearly sense the little blue dragon's current position. At this moment, the little blue dragon was about 1,000 meters underground. The cave created by the Talisman Lord's high-temperature rune array wasn't very deep. After Yang Tian jumped into the cave, he used his mental power to control the speed of his fall. A strange program controlled a large number of small particles formed by rune energy to emit a bright light and illuminate the surroundings. After falling for 100 meters, Yang Tian saw that the cave was surrounded by layers of black rocks. These rocks were actually stellar rocks. These stellar rocks were melted by the high temperature. The cave walls looked very smooth like black glass. Yang Tian finally understood why the Talisman Lord had designed the high-temperature rune array. These stellar rocks were not only dense, but they were also very sturdy. They could only be broken by melting them at extremely high temperatures. Seeing these stellar rocks, Yang Tian couldn't help but admire the Talisman Lord's methods. He remembered that in the Hui family, it took a very long time to melt the stellar rocks and extract the metal to make weapons. However, the Talisman Lord used this kind of rune array to melt the stellar rocks that were hundreds of meters thick in less than an hour. Chapter 716. 2 chapters combined into one. When he was a few hundred meters deep into the cave, a dark red light appeared at the bottom. It looked like the color of blood. Just as Yang Tian was about to stop, a powerful suction force came from the bottom. Yang Tian could not react in time and was bound by the powerful suction force as he fell. Yang Tian was shocked. As he fell, he wanted to use the red saber in his hand to stab into the cave wall to slow down his fall. Clang! Unexpectedly, when the tip of the saber hit the black stellar stone, the saber bent and was bounced back. The stellar stone was extremely tough and dense to begin with. Under the high temperature, the impurities were melted away and the surface of the cave turned into a pure metallic substance. If it were not for the fact that the red saber was also tough and had runes protecting it, the saber would have been broken by this attack. Plop! Yang Tian was very close to the bottom of the cave. Before he could think of a way, he fell into the red, sticky liquid at the bottom of the cave. The sticky red liquid was spinning rapidly and formed a whirlpool. The powerful suction force was created by the red liquid. Black Talisman Lord and Huey Meow Meow followed closely behind. After Yang Tian fell into the red liquid, they also fell into the red liquid while screaming. As soon as Yang Tian fell into the red liquid, he could feel the world spinning around him. His vision blurred as he fell uncontrollably. It was as if he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. It was a very uncomfortable feeling, but there was nothing Yang Tian could do. All he could do was grit his teeth and hold on to the saber in his hand. He used his powerful spiritual energy to slowly separate his body from the red liquid. Puffed. A few minutes later, Yang Tian heard a muffled sound. Next, his body felt lighter and his falling speed slowed down. His vision was finally restored. What appeared in front of Yang Tian's eyes was a patch of light blue surrounded by fist-sized bubbles. When Yang Tian's body came into contact with these bubbles, popping sounds could be heard as they popped one by one. At this time, Yang Tian had already fallen into the light blue liquid. The bubbles in the blue liquid were not simple bubbles. After they burst, they released waves of destructive power similar to the annihilation of space. If it were not for the fact that the destructive power did not cover a large area, and that Yang Tian used his mental power to protect his body, the bubbles would have killed Yang Tian. Within the blue liquid, Yang Tian's body was still descending. Yang Tian originally wanted to adjust his body, but he was surprised to find that this blue liquid actually made him unable to exert his strength. Not to mention water, the density of this blue liquid was even lower than the density of air. The effect of force was mutual. Yang Tian could not use the blue liquid to move his body. Yang Tian tried many times with his mental power, but he could only turn his body around and face upward. This action caused the surrounding bubbles to increase in number. The explosions caused Yang Tian's mental power to deplete rapidly. Although the speed of his descent in the blue liquid could not be compared to the speed of his descent in the red liquid, it was still faster than an object falling in the air. In more than a minute, Yang Tian had already descended thousands of meters in the blue liquid. Suddenly, a bright light came from behind him. Poof! Just as Yang Tian was about to turn his body around, another cracking sound was heard. Then, Yang Tian felt that he had finally regained his freedom. Immediately, he turned around. The bright white light was very blinding. Yang Tian could vaguely see a greenish-yellow, giant dragon. It was obviously the little blue dragon. At this time, the Talisman Master was on top of the little blue dragon's head. The Talisman Master's body was very small compared to the little blue dragon's enormous body. However, the little blue dragon was firmly pinned down by the Talisman Master and could not move. Next to them, there was a sphere of unknown size that was emitting a strong light. Although it was just a glance, Yang Tian had determined the location of the Talisman Master and the little blue dragon. As he descended rapidly, he slashed with the red longsword in his hand. With a whoosh, a red wind blade slashed toward the Talisman Master. Hearing the sound, the Talisman Master knew that Yang Tian had arrived. When he saw Yang Tian slashing toward him, he immediately dodged. The blade aura that Yang Tian slashed out was very condensed and precise under the control of his mental power. Not only did it make the Talisman Master dodge, but it also did not hurt the little blue dragon. After regaining its freedom, the little blue dragon opened its mouth and let out a roar. It opened its mouth and spat out a golden dragon flame at the Talisman Master who had dodged to the side. However, the Talisman Master was very fast. Before the dragon flame could burn him, he had dodged to the side. What the dragon flame burned was only his afterimage. Ah! The Talisman Master who had dodged to the side laughed loudly. At this time, Yang Tian landed and looked at the Talisman Master cautiously. Compared to before, the Talisman Master seemed to have matured a lot. He now looked like a young man in his 20s. A set of black armor appeared on the Talisman Master's body. This set of armor was covered with strange patterns and runes. It looked very exquisite. When the Talisman Master wore it, he looked much more domineering. Roar! The little blue dragon let out a deep roar to express its dissatisfaction. At the same time, it also sent some information to Yang Tian. The little blue dragon told Yang Tian that it had fallen into the Talisman Master's trap. The Talisman Master was just an ordinary cultivator in the beginning. However, after creating the rune program, he became very shrewd. When it came to scheming, not many people could compare to him. What the little blue dragon meant was that it had been used by the Talisman Master. After laughing proudly, the Talisman Master raised his hand and pointed at the ball of light above his head. Many small particles shot out from between his fingers. These small particles were engraved with runes and were formed from pure rune energy. After these small particles landed on the ball of light let out a boom and started burning. Previously, this ball of light was like a cold lamp that simply released a strong light. But after it was ignited, it released a scorching energy. Have a good taste of the power of the flame essence. After the Talisman Master finished speaking, his figure disappeared. After the ball of light was ignited, the temperature it released was even higher than the rune array used to drill holes. Yang Tian and the little blue dragon quickly retreated. However, they crashed into an invisible rune energy wall and were bounced back. In just 1 or 2 seconds, Yang Tian's mind power could not protect him. The energy released by the ball of light was not the strongest in the beginning. However, as time passed, the temperature it released became higher and higher. Yang Tian turned around and squinted at the ball of light that seemed to have become much bigger. The light it released was more and more similar to the light of a star. Within the intense, blazing white light, there was actually a faint golden color. Before, the little blue dragon had said that it was being used by the Talisman Master. Seeing this situation, Yang Tian guessed that the Talisman Master must have used the little blue dragon's dragon flames to activate this ball of light. This ball of light was obviously a treasure. This was because the strange program told Yang Tian that this ball of light was formed from fire rune energy. What should he do now? Yang Tian's current situation was even worse than when he was enveloped by the flame array. Yang Tian's reaction was extremely fast. With a thought, he raised his hand and activated his storage bracelet. He wanted to put this ball of light into his storage bracelet. No matter how powerful this ball of light was, if it was put into his storage bracelet, it would definitely lose its destructive power. This was only an attempt. It was the only way Yang Tian could think of in this extremely short period of time. If it failed, Yang Tian did not even think about it. The result of Yang Tian's attempt was, of course, a failure. This ball of light was like a small star. It emitted a powerful rune energy that affected the spatial rune energy. There was no time. Just as Yang Tian was at a loss, the little blue dragon suddenly enlarged its body. It opened its mouth and swallowed the ball of light into its stomach. Xiaolong. Yang Tian did not expect the little blue dragon to do this. In addition, it moved so quickly that Yang Tian could not stop it in time. He instinctively shouted. Yang Tian was horrified when he saw the little blue dragon swallow the ball of light. He knew that the little blue dragon did this to protect him. With such a high temperature, the little blue dragon swallowed the ball of light that was like a small star. It was hard to guarantee that the little blue dragon's body would not be burned to a crisp. However, the situation that followed was beyond Yang Tian's expectations. After swallowing the high-temperature ball of light, the little blue dragon opened its mouth and spat out black smoke. It made a burp sound from its mouth. It sounded like the little blue dragon was burping. The little blue dragon's body was not burned by the high-temperature ball of light, as Yang Tian was worried about. Yang Tian opened his eyes wide and stared at the little blue dragon's huge body. He was stunned. The little blue dragon was the same. Its eyes were full of surprise. It was also a little confused by this outcome. It only had one thought just now, and that was to swallow this high-temperature ball of light into its stomach and let it enter its own energy world. At least it could buy Yang Tian some time to escape. It thought that it would definitely die, but it did not expect this to happen. The little blue dragon and Yang Tian stared at each other for a moment. Yang Tian and the little blue dragon only regained their senses when Huey Meow Meow and the Black Talisman Lord landed from above. Although Huey Meow Meow had already seen the little blue dragon's enlarged appearance, she was still shocked when she saw the little blue dragon's current appearance. The Black Talisman Lord was very calm. After landing, he looked at Yang Tian and asked, "Where is the Talisman Lord?" Yang Tian said helplessly, "He escaped again. He is much stronger than before. If we give him more time, the three of us and Xiaolong will not be his match." After hearing Yang Tian's words, the Black Talisman Lord frowned. "What do we do now? Why don't we go back?" On the way here, the Black Talisman Lord had seen many strange and inexplicable things. His subconscious told him that it would become more and more dangerous. If he continued, he might lose his life. It was not easy for him to come to this world. The Black Talisman Lord did not want to die now. Also, the Black Talisman Lord had to report the situation here to Shi Chunyu. Yang Tian knew that the Black Talisman Lord wanted to retreat, but he did not want to persuade him to stay. This was because the Black Talisman Lord was vicious and shrewd. He was not a trustworthy person. If anything happened later, not only would he not be of help, he would also be a burden. Yang Tian thought for a moment and said, "How about this? You go back first and understand the situation above. There are many places above that we have not had the time to explore." The Black Talisman Lord rolled his eyes. "All right, you have to be careful." Yang Tian nodded. The Black Talisman Lord pressed a few times on the compass-like talisman treasure. A blue light was emitted from the talisman treasure and enveloped the Black Talisman Lord. In less than 3 seconds, the Black Talisman Lord disappeared in the blue light. It was obviously impossible to return the way he came. He could only use a teleportation talisman formation. The fact that the Black Talisman Lord could leave meant that he could use a teleportation talisman formation here. The Black Talisman Lord cherished his life very much. Every time he went to a place, he would leave a teleportation talisman formation in a secret place. These talisman formations were extremely small. Coupled with a small illusory formation, it would be difficult for cultivators who were not proficient in talismans to discover the existence of these teleportation talisman formations. When the Black Talisman Lord reappeared, he was already next to the hole that the Talisman Lord had made. The light in this space was dim, and he could not see the end. The Talisman Lord had suddenly appeared here with a large number of mechanical rune beasts. It was obvious that there was an entrance to this space. The Talisman Lord had said that the Boundless Temple's supervisor, Kuman, had been trapped by a talisman formation. If he could help Kuman out now, he would definitely leave a good impression on Kuman. The Black Talisman Lord moved the needle of the compass in his hand and smiled. That person is too cowardly. He's too scheming. After the Black Talisman Lord had left, Huey Meow Meow said with dissatisfaction. Yang Tian said with a smile, "It's better that he's gone. We walk different paths and cannot work together." Boom! As soon as Yang Tian said that, there was a loud boom. The little blue dragon that was lying on the side suddenly burst into flames. Its gigantic body flickered with golden flames, which were extremely similar to the dragon flames. When he saw what was happening, Yang Tian could not help but be shocked. But when he saw the expression in the little blue dragon's eyes, Yang Tian let out a sigh of relief. It turned out that the little blue dragon's eyes were filled with joy. When the little blue dragon's body burst into flames, its aura suddenly became even more powerful. Yang Tian knew that after the little blue dragon swallowed the high-temperature ball of light, it had received great benefits. After the little blue dragon swallowed the high-temperature ball of light, the heat quickly disappeared. When the Black Talisman Lord arrived, he only noticed that the temperature was a little abnormal. He guessed that the little blue dragon and the Talisman Lord had fought and caused the temperature in this space to be too high. The abnormality that the little blue dragon was showing was obviously caused by the high-temperature ball of light. Not only did it not harm the little blue dragon's body, but it also benefited the little blue dragon. This made Yang Tian even more confused about the Talisman Lord's actions. The energy ripples that were coming from the little blue dragon's body became stronger and stronger. In the end, there were signs that it was about to break through. At this time, the little blue dragon closed its eyes. The dragon flames on its body began to dance even more happily. Although the little blue dragon's body was burning, it did not release any scorching energy. Instead, it was like a strange cold flame. Yang Tian walked closer to the little blue dragon, reached out his hand, and touched this cold flame with a finger. Yang Tian did not feel any heat from his finger. He only felt an intense pain. At the same time, a cold air flowed from his finger into Yang Tian's arm. Yang Tian could not help but take a deep breath and quickly retracted his hand. Chapter 717. If it wasn't for Yang Tian's origin power protecting his body, his entire arm would have been destroyed the moment he came into contact with this cold flame. The little blue dragon had become even more powerful, and Yang Tian was naturally very happy. After reminding Hui Yi and Meow Meow, the two of them guarded the little blue dragon at the side, constantly keeping an eye on the surroundings and protecting the little blue dragon. Within the little blue dragon's body, there was also an energy world similar to Yang Tian's. Yang Tian's origin realm was like a universe, and the little blue dragon's energy world was its Dragon Ball. From the outside, the Dragon Ball looks like a large golden bead. Its energy world was inside this golden bead. The high-temperature light ball that was swallowed by the little blue dragon naturally entered this energy world. Previously, the world within the Dragon Ball was chaotic and filled with countless different energies. If a window was opened on the surface of the Dragon Ball, and one looked inside from the outside, one would discover that this world was actually like a kaleidoscope. All kinds of energies mixed together, beautiful and messy. When the high-temperature light ball entered this world, the scorching energy it emitted was like a fireball entering oil. The countless energies within the Dragon Ball world were boiled by this high-temperature light ball. And this high-temperature light ball, in the process of chaos, began to slowly rotate. In the process of its rotation, countless golden thread-like energies gathered around this high-temperature light ball, wanting to envelop this high-temperature light ball and then assimilate it. If the original energy within the Dragon Ball world was considered as native residents, then this high-temperature light ball was clearly an outsider. In the beginning, the two were water and fire incompatible. The little blue dragon swallowed this high-temperature light ball in order to save Yang Tian and buy time for Yang Tian to escape. It was already prepared to die. However, the situation wasn't what the little blue dragon imagined. After the high-temperature light ball entered the Dragon Ball world, it wasn't as violent as it imagined, destroying its energy world. Even though it was wrapped in countless golden threads and became like a cocoon, the high-temperature ball of light still appeared very docile. Although the little blue dragon was a dragon, he was as intelligent as a human. Furthermore, he had accompanied Yang Tian on his journey and had seen many incredible things. Especially in terms of cultivation, it helped Yang Tian change his cultivation method, directly helping Yang Tian obtain the power of the Dragon Orb, and also indirectly allowing Yang Tian to cultivate the origin power. Knowing Yang Tian's cultivation experience, the little blue dragon suddenly understood what was going on. When it first arrived, the high-temperature ball of light did not exist. Instead, it was a large cluster of blood-red, root-like things that floated in the middle of the stone room. The little blue dragon could feel the existence of rune energy. These red roots that were entangled together were actually made of rune energy. This kind of rune energy was obviously not man-made, but naturally formed. It should be a part of a natural talisman array. When the little blue dragon arrived, the talisman master was using the flames formed from rune energy to destroy this kind of rune energy. The little blue dragon believed that the talisman master was not a good person and was an ambitious guy. If it could get rid of the talisman master, it would do Yang Tian a big favor. Without any hesitation, the little blue dragon's body grew bigger and opened its mouth to spit out a high-temperature dragon flame of the talisman master. At this time, the talisman master's power was even stronger than before when it disappeared. He noticed the arrival of the little blue dragon. While the talisman master was vigilant towards the arrival of the little blue dragon, he didn't stop attacking the cluster of red roots. Fire-restrained wood. The talisman master spent a lot of effort, but was unable to destroy this cluster of red roots. This was because the temperature of the flames he used was too low. Seeing the little blue dragon's dragon flame attack, the talisman master dodged to the side. During this process, he saw that a red root that was brushed by the dragon flame actually burned, revealing a white and shiny object. Seeing this situation, the talisman master couldn't help but be overjoyed. The little blue dragon's dragon flame could be of help. The talisman master was extremely cunning. He didn't reveal his purpose in front of the little blue dragon. Although he had the strength to defeat the little blue dragon, he deliberately allowed the little blue dragon to chase him around the stone room. The little blue dragon didn't notice and didn't know the talisman master's purpose. It thought that the talisman master was afraid of the dragon flame, so it kept spitting out dragon flame. As the talisman master dodged, he guided the little blue dragon to burn off the red skin on the surface of the red roots. When the last bit of red skin on the red roots was melted by the dragon flame, the originally red roots quickly gathered together and formed a sphere that emitted strong light. After achieving his goal, the talisman master finally stopped dodging and easily restrained the little blue dragon. At this time, Yang Tian just happened to arrive. The talisman master used the little blue dragon's dragon flame to destroy what he wanted to destroy. Although he achieved his goal, he also indirectly helped the little blue dragon. When the red roots were burned by the little blue dragon's dragon flame, it also absorbed the dragon flame and changed. This high-temperature ball of light was actually refined by the little blue dragon using the dragon flame. After being swallowed by the little blue dragon, it naturally wouldn't cause any harm to the little blue dragon. This situation was similar to how Yang Tian's origin power couldn't harm the little blue dragon. This was because one of the three great powers that made up the origin power was the power of the dragon orb. Although this was the case, the high-temperature ball of light contained an enormous amount of energy. It had already surpassed the energy contained in the little blue dragon's energy world. This high-temperature ball of light was obviously unwilling to be assimilated by the native power, but it also couldn't harm the little blue dragon. As a result, in the little blue dragon's energy world, after the high-temperature ball of light was wrapped by its original power, it didn't move or cause any harm to the little blue dragon. Seeing the high-temperature ball of light's behavior, the little blue dragon quickly guessed this point. Since the high-temperature ball of light's energy could be used by itself, the little blue dragon tried to use its mind to control this high-temperature ball of light. When the little blue dragon's consciousness descended into this energy world, the energy that wrapped the high-temperature ball of light quickly dispersed under the little blue dragon's mind. The little blue dragon used a trace of his mind to rush towards the high-temperature ball of light. When this trace of his mind came into contact with the high-temperature ball of light, it was like a bomb had been detonated. Boom! In the dragon orb world, there was a roar, and the high-temperature ball of light actually burst open, releasing a powerful energy. The powerful explosion of energy didn't cause the little blue dragon's dragon orb world to collapse. Instead, a strange change occurred. After the light ball exploded, it turned into countless white dots. Some rose, some fell, and some were in the middle. The stunned little blue dragon wanted to use his mind to stop this change because the original power in the dragon orb world had been scattered. But when he thought about how Yang Tian also encountered this situation when he was cultivating, he didn't stop it, but let nature take its course. This might be a good change. As long as the dragon orb world wasn't destroyed, then this change could be controlled. The little blue dragon heard the story of Panga's creation from Yang Tian. According to the legend, Panga was born in a huge egg, and this egg was the later universe world. Pangu split the egg with his axe, and the clear air rose and became the sky, and the turbid air fell and became the earth in the little blue dragon's dragon orb world. A similar change occurred. And at this time, it was when the little blue dragon's body released a powerful energy fluctuation and burned. The dragon orb world and the little blue dragon's body were closely connected. Once the dragon orb world changed, the little blue dragon's body would also change. For the little blue dragon, this was the critical time. He had no distractions and focused on observing the changes in the dragon orb world. Time passed by minute, and after an unknown amount of time, the dragon orb world finally took shape. Originally, in the little blue dragon's dragon orb world, all kinds of energy intertwined with each other, like a chaotic world. But now, the little blue dragon's dragon orb world had become a world of its own. This world was different from Yang Tian's universe world. Yang Tian's universe world had countless planets, and above the planets, there was a world like the little blue dragon. The two looked the same, but their essence was different. The little azure dragon's world was many times larger than the combined area of countless planets. At this time, the little blue dragon was still at the peak of the illusion realm, and was just a little bit away from completing the promotion. The little blue dragon didn't have any experience in the promotion of the illusion realm to the destiny realm. They had originally thought that their efforts would be in vain. However, all of a sudden, countless dragons appeared in this world. There were golden dragons, azure dragons, white dragons. The little blue dragon looked down at this world like a god, and was surprised to find that this world was actually the world in the dragon starfield. All dragons had their own life, aura. Although he didn't have any cultivation experience, the little blue dragon had muddle-headedly advanced to the destiny realm. Chapter 718. Pung! Pung pung. Black Talisman Lord held the compass in his hand and finally found an entrance. After walking for a few hundred meters, he heard the sound of energy colliding. Black Talisman Lord immediately quickened his pace and walked into a slightly wider cave. Under the dim light, he finally saw Kuman. Kuman was gritting her teeth and continuously waving her palms in all directions, trying to break the invisible rune energy that trapped her. Kuman only stopped when she saw Black Talisman Lord. "Deacon, let me help you." Black Talisman Lord walked up to Kuman and said. Although Kuman was strong, she did not understand runes. She could only use her strength to exhaust the rune energy that trapped her. Withered Barbarian felt that the rune energy trapping him was getting weaker and weaker, and it wouldn't take long for him to break free. He didn't want to waste too much energy, so he nodded. Kuman could clearly sense that Black Talisman Lord was trying to curry favor with her. Kuman did not dislike this. As the deacon of the Everlasting Temple, she was used to people trying to curry favor with her. She felt that it was natural. Black Talisman Lord used the compass to check the rune array that trapped Kuman. He wanted to laugh, but he held it in. The rune array that trapped Kuman was not difficult to break. Black Talisman Lord only needed a moment to break it. However, Black Talisman Lord deliberately worked for half a day before he managed to free Kuman from the rune array. Black Talisman Lord had a good grasp of time. It was neither short nor long. If it was short, it would seem that Kuman was too incompetent. If it was long, it would seem that Black Talisman Lord was too incompetent. After breaking the rune array, Kuman nodded in satisfaction and said to Black Talisman Lord, "Thank you." Black Talisman Lord smiled and said, "You're welcome. It's my honor to serve you." Kuman smiled and did not say anything when she saw Black Talisman Lord's respectful attitude. However, Black Talisman Lord knew that he finally had a way to sneak into the Everlasting Temple. The freed, withered barbarian king quickly shifted his attention to this matter. It was clear that the Talisman Lord was playing a big game of chess. If they couldn't stop the Talisman Lord, the continent that had been peaceful for many years would boil like boiling water. This wasn't a good thing for the Divine Hall. Through the confrontation with the Talisman Master, Kuman understood that it was impossible for her to resolve this matter by herself. What happened during this period of time? Kuman asked indifferently as he walked quickly through the narrow passage. Black Talisman Lord was following behind Kuman. When he heard Kuman's question, he briefly explained what had happened after Kuman had been trapped. During this process, Kuman heard the two words Yang Tian. "You're saying that the child named Mu Yi's real name is actually Yang Tian?" After Black Talisman Lord finished speaking, Kuman stopped and turned around to look at the submissive Black Talisman Lord. Black Talisman Lord said, "Yes, he is actually Yang Tian." Yang Tian hadn't told Black Talisman Lord to hide his identity, so Black Talisman Lord accidentally blurted it out. When he heard Kuman's tone suddenly turn cold, Black Talisman Lord knew that his guess was most likely correct. Yang Tian and Kuman had a conflict and perhaps a deep hatred. Black Talisman Lord wasn't a good person to begin with. In the previous world, he could still suppress Yang Tian with his strength and had a psychological advantage over Yang Tian. However, after experiencing what had happened previously, Black Talisman Lord understood that after coming to this world, he was far behind Yang Tian in terms of cultivation realm and attainments in runes. At this time, Black Talisman Lord was more than happy to make trouble for Yang Tian. At the same time, he also drew a clear line between himself and Yang Tian. His goal was to join the Divine Hall, and Yang Tian came from the same place as him. In order to prevent Yang Tian from ruining his plans, he had no choice but to do this. Kuman quickly understood Black Talisman Lord's intentions. He said to Black Talisman Lord, "You're not bad. When this matter is over, you can become a manager of the Wuji Temple." "Thank you, sir," Black Talisman Lord said gratefully. He had finally received Kuman's acknowledgement. If Black Talisman Lord hadn't appeared, she would have summoned Yang Tian into the Divine Hall. Given Yang Tian's hatred for her and his abilities in runes, Kuman felt a lingering fear when he thought of this. Fortunately, now that he knew that Mu Yi was Yang Tian, he couldn't let Yang Tian live any longer. After Kuman walked out of the cave, he left the underground cave with Black Talisman Lord and returned to the surface. The place where Llama Mountain had been was now a huge, trumpet-shaped cave. No one expected that the Talisman Lord would create such a huge commotion just to drill a hole in the 100-meter thick star rock. The rotation of the airflow required energy to drive it. The layers of louse crystals in the cave provided the energy for this huge talisman array. After the airflow had rotated several times, there wasn't much left. This continent had been peaceful for a long time. The sudden occurrence of such a huge event naturally attracted a large number of cultivators. Whether it was the Divine Hall or the various family clans, they all rushed over as soon as they heard the news. Without the energy provided by the louse crystals, the airflow in the cave no longer rotated quickly. The cultivators who wanted to make a profit were all disappointed. Even so, these cultivators didn't leave. They all knew that something big was going to happen later. After Kuman returned to the surface, hundreds of thousands of cultivators had gathered around the cave. Even more cultivators were on their way. What these people didn't know was that they would soon face a huge crisis. Not many could survive this catastrophe. Kuman and Black Talisman Lord quickly met up with the Wuji Temple. After the little blue dragon completed his advancement, he opened his eyes. Xiaolong, congratulations. You finally advanced. This time, the little blue dragon had profited from a disaster and successfully advanced. Yang Tian was naturally happy for him. At this time, the cold flame on the little azure dragon's body had been completely extinguished. Its body was originally golden, as if it was made of gold. Now, the golden color on its body had dimmed a little, but it still had an ancient feel to it. After advancing, the little blue dragon naturally became more mature. In the dragon race's evolution process, the little blue dragon had completed more than half. Even so, his feelings for Yang Tian didn't change. After happily swimming a few laps in the air, the little blue dragon turned back into a mini dragon and landed on Yang Tian's shoulder. He rubbed his head against Yang Tian's cheek. After the high-temperature ball of light was swallowed by the little blue dragon, the talisman formation was broken. The talisman master's position had long been calculated by a strange program. After the little blue dragon completed its advancement, Yang Tian pulled Huey Meow Meow and walked towards the cave wall. They disappeared into the wall. It looked like the two of them knew how to pass through walls. Yang Tian had a feeling that the talisman master's secret would soon be revealed. Chapter 719. Master, those people are not dead. In a blue cave, a translucent mechanical beast detached itself from a root-like object that looked like a blue crystal and flew to the talisman master's side. This blue cave was made of talisman material that looked like a blue crystal. The talisman master was sitting in the middle of the cave with his eyes closed. Beneath him, there was a talisman array that had just been drawn. Invisible energy continued to flow into the talisman master's body. After half a day, the talisman master's appearance had changed again. Previously, he looked like he was in his early 20s. Now, he looked like he was in his 30s. This translucent mechanical beast that looked like a mechanical spider was the second generation of talisman program that the talisman master had mentioned. It was called Little Talisman. The talisman master opened his eyes and took out a mirror from his storage bracelet. He looked at his current appearance in the mirror. The talisman master was very dissatisfied with his current appearance. Suddenly, anger appeared on his face, and he smashed the mirror on the ground. Smack! The mirror made of metal did not break. It bounced to a corner of the cave. Just a little bit more. Sigh. The talisman master sighed helplessly. In his plan, the perfect body should be his youthful appearance. Now, with the passage of time, his appearance was developing into that of an old man. Soon, he would return to his previous appearance when his physical body was destroyed. Although he could use the powerful energy in his body to change his current appearance, it was just a disguise. It was no different from plastic surgery. If his plan could not be completed, he would still die soon. After working for hundreds of thousands of years, he could only live for a few more years. The process of the Talisman Master and Yang Tian's rebirth was almost the same. However, Yang Tian only used a very short time to obtain a new physical body, a young physical body. And the Talisman Master? It took him tens of thousands of years to live again. The reason for this was that Yang Tian was young and had not reached the end of his life. The Talisman Master had snatched his lifespan from the heavens. It could be said that the Talisman Master's actions were against the heavens and the rules of this world. From a Talisman Master's point of view, Yang Tian had ruined his plan. In fact, it was the rules of this world that had set him up. Fortunately, he still had a chance to make up for it. In the Talisman Master's opinion, it was very normal that Yang Tian and the others could successfully overcome his trap and survive. He knew that Yang Tian was most likely his nemesis. The root-like object that Xiaofu had climbed earlier was one of the energy lines of the natural rune array. The natural rune arrays of this world, after countless years of growth, had taken root in the entire continent and even extended to the sea of stars outside the continent. Through a branch of the natural glyph array, Xiaofu was able to know everything that was going on around him. The actions of Yang Tian and the rest, naturally, could not be concealed from the Talisman Master. Rune Masters were reborn using the energy of natural rune arrays. Before their bodies were fully grown, they were like premature babies that were unavoidably affected by the natural rune arrays. The Talisman Master's next plan was to sever the connection between himself and the natural talisman array. At the same time, he had to absorb the natural talisman array's energy for his own use. If he succeeded, he would become the most powerful cultivator in this world. Even the gods would not be able to compare to him. At that time, he would obtain an endless lifespan. It's best that he's not dead. I hope he can do as I wish. After throwing away the mirror in his hand, the Talisman Master looked in Yang Tian's direction and muttered to himself. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the layers of stone walls and see Yang Tian. The Talisman Master quietly looked at Yang Tian and the rest. When the little blue dragon woke up and Yang Tian arrived in a red world, the Talisman Master smiled. All of Yang Tian and the rest's actions seemed to be under the Talisman Master's control. What is this place? After passing through the stone walls, Yang Tian and the rest arrived in a world filled with countless red roots. These roots were like rubies, but they were also the energy lines of the natural rune array. They were formed from pure runic energy. Even without the strange program's reminder, Yang Tian could sense the chaotic runic energy ripples coming from these red roots. When they arrived, Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow were standing on top of a clump of red roots. Both of them looked behind them and saw that the stone walls had disappeared. Faced with Huey Meow Meow's question, Yang Tian could only shake his head. He did not know where they were either. Now, they could only take one step at a time. Yang Tian did not understand the situation here. Naturally, he would not move recklessly. But just because he did not move, it did not mean that the environment would not change. Roar! Suddenly, the scene around Yang Tian and the rest changed. It became a world of ice and snow. The temperature dropped to an unbearable level. An ice beast let out a furious roar and pounced toward Yang Tian. TCH, Yang Tian quickly swung his saber and sliced the ice beast into two with a single slash. After killing the ice beast, the scene returned to normal. It was still a red world. Was it an illusion? Soon, Yang Tian knew that it was not an illusion. After the ice beast was killed, its carcass was still there. It was floating a few meters in front of them. As it had just been killed, Yang Tian could clearly feel the cold air coming out of its carcass. The little blue dragon had sharp eyes. It saw a fist-sized black life crystal in the ice beast's carcass. The little blue dragon immediately leaped from Yang Tian's shoulder and grabbed the black life crystal with both of its claws. It returned to Yang Tian's shoulder and began to chew on it. There was a series of chuckles. After chomping on the black life crystal, the little blue dragon told Yang Tian that the life crystal was real. Yang Tian was shocked. He thought it was an illusion, but he did not expect it to be real. No, it was not all real. At least, the scene of ice and snow was fake. With the Talisman Master around, the strange program would not appear in public. Although that was the case, it maintained contact with Yang Tian at all times. Just when Yang Tian was in disbelief, the strange program said, "The natural talisman array has infiltrated the entire land. It should have a certain level of intelligence. This ice beast must have been sent here by it. This is one of the natural talisman array's defense methods." Yang Tian understood that it was just a guess by the strange program. "So what do we do now?" Yang Tian asked the strange program in his mind. The strange program said, "We can only wait and see. I could try to intercept the natural talisman array's information." Of course, Yang Tian agreed with the strange program's suggestion. He pulled Huey Meow Meow and sat down. If what the strange program said was correct, the natural talisman array would not attack them as long as they did not move. Yang Tian did not move, but the talisman master became anxious. There were some things that were not convenient for him to do now. He could only rely on others. In order to get Yang Tian to move, the talisman master said, "This is an illusion in the sea of stars. If you can destroy it, you will gain great benefits." Yang Tian did not expect the talisman master's voice to appear in this space. Although he was surprised, he did not find it strange. "What benefits?" Yang Tian asked with a smile as soon as the talisman master's voice disappeared. The talisman master said, "This is the best training ground. Since there are benefits, why don't you do it yourself?" Yang Tian asked with a smile. The talisman master said, "Because my power comes from this talisman array. There are some places where my power is useless." This should be the truth. If the talisman master's power and the natural talisman array's power came from the same source, his attacks would naturally not cause damage to the natural talisman array. "You want to destroy the natural talisman array?" Yang Tian asked again. He heard another meaning in the talisman master's words. The talisman master answered honestly, "That's right. They were all smart people. There were some things that did not need to be hidden." This was something that Yang Tian liked. He also knew that this was because the talisman master was very confident. Even if he knew the answer, he had to do as the talisman master asked. Chapter 720. The Sea of Stars was the most mysterious and unfathomable place in this world. It was said that even gods had to pay a tremendous price to cross the Sea of Stars. The illusionary realm that Yang Tian was in right now was called the Sea of Stars Illusionary Realm by the Talisman Lord. With the two words Sea of Stars, this illusionary realm was probably the most powerful illusionary realm in this world. The things that appeared in the illusionary realm were both real and fake. It was truly hard for people to determine. For example, you thought it was fake, but it was actually real. You thought it was real, but it turned out to be fake. There was falsehood in truth and truth in falsehood. Such a powerful illusionary realm was actually a defense produced by a natural talisman array. It was truly miraculous. But recalling that the Talisman Lord said before that natural talisman arrays already developed intelligence, this was not hard to understand. "Why are you telling me this?" Yang Tian was silent for a moment, then asked with a cold smile. "Yang Tian, let's cooperate." The Talisman Lord did not answer Yang Tian's words, but said coolly, "How do we cooperate?" Yang Tian asked with a smile. The Talisman Lord said, "You help me destroy this natural talisman array, and this old man will send you to the Divine Realm." Divine Realm. When the Talisman Lord mentioned these two words, Yang Tian could not help frowning. Going to the Divine Realm was precisely Yang Tian's ultimate goal. This was not just because Qin Fei was in the Divine Realm, but also Yang Tian's cultivation goal. Since the Talisman Lord said that he wanted to send Yang Tian to the Divine Realm, he could naturally raise Yang Tian's cultivation realm to the realm of gods. Seeing that Yang Tian did not answer for a moment, the Talisman Lord continued, "As long as you promise this old man will tell you a secret regarding this world." Yang Tian said with a smile, "Then you tell me this secret first. Only then can I consider whether to agree or not." What a slippery little fellow. The Talisman Lord said with a smile and said, there's no harm in telling you. This world is not the end of cultivation. What? When the Talisman Lord finished speaking, Yang Tian could not help being startled. All along, Yang Tian thought that the world he was in now, including this continent, as well as the sea of stars, the divine realm, was the end of all worlds. He did not expect that the Talisman Lord actually said that this world was not the end. In other words, there was another world. Seeing Yang Tian's shocked expression, the Talisman Master smiled and said, "This old man has slept for hundreds of thousands of years and had many strange dreams. And those dreams all came from a natural talisman array. It recorded the birth of this world. Although the dream is already blurry, this old man knows that this is not the end. Those so-called gods in the divine realm." Huh, I don't agree. Just as the Talisman Lord finished speaking, Yang Tian resolutely refused. The Talisman Lord swallowed his saliva when he heard Yang Tian's words. In order to cover up his embarrassment, he quickly asked, "Why?" Yang Tian smiled. "No reason. I just don't want to. If you help this old man destroy this natural talisman array, then even if this old man doesn't help you, you will still obtain enormous benefits." Over the countless years, the natural array glyphs had been absorbing the energy of this world and had even extended into the sea of stars. Even if you only obtain 1/10 of the energy, you can still become the number one person in this world. Talisman Master once again threw out this tempting result. To a cultivator, this was undoubtedly an enormous temptation. If others were to hear this result, they would probably go crazy. Yang Tian was a cultivator, so naturally, he was also very tempted. However, he also understood that if he really cooperated with the Talisman Lord, he probably wouldn't even know how he died. Ha ha ha! Yang Tian suddenly laughed. "If I become a number one person in this world, what about you?" The Talisman Lord smiled. "I won't compete with you." Yang Tian, there's a result. Just as the Talisman Lord finished speaking, the strange program's voice sounded in Yang Tian's mind. The strange program reminded Yang Tian that he must not destroy the natural array glyphs because the natural array glyphs were very, very big. In fact, it was the foundation of this world's operation. From the beginning, the Talisman Lord had shocked the people of this world. If the natural array glyphs were destroyed, this world would also be destroyed. During the period when Yang Tian and the Talisman Lord were talking, the strange program, like the Talisman Lord's rune program, had attached itself to the natural array glyphs and obtained some information about the natural array glyphs. Therefore, not only could the natural array glyphs not be destroyed, it had to be repaired. The strange program's reminder made Yang Tian finally make up his mind. He said to the Talisman Lord, "I'm sorry. I won't destroy the entire world for my own selfishness." You know? The Talisman Lord thought that Yang Tian would be tempted to agree, but he didn't expect that he would refuse again. What surprised him even more was that Yang Tian seemed to have noticed something. The Talisman Lord would never have thought that the rune program he destroyed would actually leave behind a segment. Under various coincidences, it actually regained its intelligence. After receiving Yang Tian's reply, the Talisman Lord snorted and laughed coldly. "Then you can wait for your death." With that, the Talisman Lord no longer paid any attention to Yang Tian and closed the communication. The communication between the Talisman Lord and Yang Tian was done through the rune program, Little Talisman. The control of the natural array glyphs was also done through Little Talisman. Of course, this kind of control was only partial. Otherwise, the Talisman Lord wouldn't have to do it himself to destroy the natural array glyphs in an instant. He also wouldn't have wasted so much time talking nonsense with Yang Tian. The strange program and the Talisman Lord's Little Talisman were of the same origin. Naturally, it had the same ability as Little Talisman, or even more powerful. This was because the Talisman Lord's Little Talisman was only a tool of the Talisman Lord. Because of the lesson of the first generation of rune programs, the Talisman Lord didn't allow the rune programs to evolve their own consciousness. However, the strange program was different. In fact, it already had its own consciousness and had become a real life form. In other words, The strange program was even more advanced than the Talisman Lord's little talisman. As soon as the Talisman Lord finished speaking, the environment around Yang Tian suddenly changed into a desolate desert. Yang Tian, Huey Meow Meow, and the little blue dragon were all trapped in the desolate desert. This was an attack that the Talisman Lord had on Yang Tian. He wanted to use Little Talisman to activate the illusion of the natural array glyphs, trapping Yang Tian and the rest in the boundless desert. If it was just a simple desert environment, it naturally wouldn't be able to hurt Yang Tian and the rest. However, the gravity of this desert was extremely strong. Even though Yang Tian was at the peak of the illusion realm, he felt that his legs were as heavy as lead while standing in this desert. It was very difficult for him to take a step. As for Huey Meow Meow, it was even difficult for her move. The little blue dragon flew round in the air and felt that it was strenuous, so it returned to Yang Tian's shoulder. Its body was originally as light as a feather to Yang Tian, but he didn't expect it to be made of star stones. Not only that, but the gravity was still increasing. Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow's legs began to slowly sink. It only stopped when it reached their knees. Then, the yellow sand that wrapped around their legs actually gathered. Yang Tian used his powerful mental power, but he couldn't move himself out of the yellow sand. Apart from that, the surrounding temperature also rose rapidly. Just as Yang Tian was frowning and thinking of a solution, the scene in front of him changed. The desert disappeared, and they returned to their original place. The strange program's voice sounded in Yang Tian's mind. "Don't worry, I can deal with Little Talisman." Chapter 721. Can I take a look? Yang Tian was very interested in the battle between the rune programs. The strange program said, "No problem. Master, I have bad news for you. The other party also has a tool like me." After the strange program destroyed the illusion, Xiao Fu naturally sensed it and immediately reported it to the Talisman Lord. It was only then that the strange program was exposed. When the Talisman Lord heard this, his eyes widened. The expression on his face was not one of surprise, but of horror. Ever since he created the rune program, the Talisman Lord had been very proud. He believed that no matter how big this world was, he was the only one who could create a rune program. This was the Talisman Lord's greatest advantage. If not for the fact that his lifespan was up, he would have long become the most powerful life form in this world. But now, Xiao Fu was telling him that there was actually another rune program. What's its origin? How does it compare to you? Can you swallow it? The Talisman Lord nervously asked 3 questions in a row. Xiao Fu said, I don't know. In response to the Talisman Lord's questions, Xiao Fu answered, I don't know 3 times in a row. Compared to the strange program, Xiao Fu was much more wooden. The Talisman Lord forced himself to calm down. When he thought about how Yang Tian came from the same world as him, he guessed that the rune program that Yang Tian possessed must be related to the first generation of rune programs. The first generation of rune programs had been destroyed. This was something that the Talisman Lord had personally confirmed. After destroying the first generation of rune programs, in order to prevent anyone else from creating rune programs, he had not hesitated to use the mighty sky warship that he had built to trap a group of subordinates who knew the secret. The Talisman Lord did not believe that Yang Tian could create a rune program like himself. This required perseverance and luck played a large part in it. Then, the rune program that Yang Tian possessed must be related to the first generation of Xiao Fu. It was most likely that Yang Tian had obtained a portion of the program. As for who was more powerful, that would only be known after a fight. While the Talisman Lord was pondering, Xiao Fu had already begun fighting with the strange program. The strange program used a special method to display the battle scene in Yang Tian's mind. The programs did not have a physical body. Through the energy lines of the natural rune array, they soon collided with each other. A black sphere appeared in Yang Tian's mind. The surface of the black sphere was covered with white and green lines that intertwined with each other, constantly expanding and shrinking. The strange program had tried its best to express itself in a form that Yang Tian could understand, but Yang Tian still could not understand it. However, he knew that the green lines were the duplicates released by the strange program. As for the white lines, they were the duplicates released by the Talisman Master's Talisman Master program, Xiaofu. The black sphere, on the other hand, was the battlefield created by the strange program and Xiaofu. It was like the memory space of a computer. The battle didn't last long. The white threads on the surface of the black sphere were quickly swallowed up by the green threads. In a few minutes, the black sphere turned into a green sphere. Immediately after, the green sphere transformed into several green lines that followed Xiaofu's path. In Yang Tian's mind, the scene of the green lines rapidly traversing the black tunnel appeared. The strange program took advantage of Xiaofu's defeat to locate Xiaofu. Once it found Xiaofu, it would be equivalent to finding the Talisman Lord. However, the black tunnel suddenly lit up. A fork appeared in the road ahead. Several green lines immediately split into two groups and rushed forward. At this moment, two images appeared in Yang Tian's mind. A fork in the road, another fork in the road. 2 lines turned into 4 lines turned into 8. 8 lines turned into 16. After chasing for a while, the strange program knew that the other party had already made preparations before coming. It would not be easy for it to find the specific location. The strange program's computing speed was very fast. It could search for hundreds of millions or even billions of paths at the same time. In the end, it would be a competition of computing speed. However, this kind of competition was very time-consuming, and it was in a passive situation. Thus, the strange program voluntarily withdrew. In addition to the previous illusion, this was the second time they had fought. The first round could be considered draw. The second round ended with the strange program winning by a small margin. Yang Tian knew that the images displayed in his mind could not directly and truly show the specific battle method. The process seemed simple, but it was actually very complicated. Xiaofu's attack this time was more of a probing nature. While the strange program was chasing, Xiaofu had already returned to the rune mechanical beast body. "You've lost." Hearing Xiaofu say that he had lost, the Talisman Lord was shocked again. Before this battle, he had actually felt somewhat lucky. He had thought that the broken rune program segment could not compare to the first-generation rune program's copy. He did not expect that the other party's rune program would be on par with Xiaofu's. The Talisman Lord had also seen the battle between the strange program and Xiaofu through a special method. After a moment of silence, he said, "This is a competition of computing speed. In fact, you are on par with it. Go again and compete with its devouring speed. Remember to use the copy to protect yourself from harm." "Yes," Xiaofu replied. The rune mechanical beast controlled by Xiaofu once again stabbed its colisserie into the energy lines of the natural rune array. In order to prevent the other party from following the lines, Xiaofu had not only set up a defensive program, it had also disconnected. After giving an affirmative response, Little Talisman followed the path of the natural talisman formation toward the location of the strange program. The strange program had been online all this time. Dealing with Xiaofu was one thing, but it also needed to obtain information about the natural rune array. That was the most important thing. When Xiaofu approached, it was detected by the strange program. There were tens of millions of paths from Little Talisman's starting point to the location of the bizarre program. As they neared, Little Talisman's clones split into 2, then 4, then 8. Clones like that required power, and were powered by a natural talisman spell formation. Each clone was as powerful as the main body. This was why the Talisman Lord wanted Xiaofu to compete with the strange program in devouring. Rune programs and digital programs were constructed differently. Digital programs had to be converted into electronic, optical, and other signals before they could be transmitted through conductors. This kind of transmission method could not directly collide with each other. The battlefield was inside the computing chip and the memory. Rune programs, on the other hand, were different. Countless rune energies were shuttling through the energy lines of the natural rune array. Once they met, there would be an actual energy collision. The energy lines of the natural rune array were the battlefield. At this moment, a grand image appeared in Yang Tian's mind. countless tiny white threads were rushing toward the strange program. The image of the strange program was Xiao Long Xiao Fu was using the copy, while the strange program was using the main body. Chapter 722. This scene was much more vivid than before. Seeing this, Yang Tian couldn't help but worry for the strange program. Next, an even more bizarre scene occurred. Countless white threads were fired at the strange program from afar, like sharp arrows from afar. The strange program that looked like Xiao Long was like a stubborn rock by the sea. Under the attack of the countless white threads, it stood firm and unmoving. When the white threads hit the strange program, they actually turned into runes that spread out in all directions. Soon, the surroundings were filled with messy runes, like drifting snowflakes. Although these white threads were clones of little talisman, they were still made up of countless runes. When they hit the strange program, they disintegrated. When the surrounding runes were densely packed to a certain extent, the strange program that looked like Xiao Long opened its mouth and inhaled. Countless runes entered its mouth and disappeared. These runes had become the strange program supplements. After swallowing these runes, the strange program that looked like Xiao Long grew several times larger. Little Talisman's attack wasn't limited to this. Seeing that the scattered clones couldn't swallow the strange program, it quickly stopped attacking. The countless white threads continued to fly and revolve around the strange program. It looked like it was looking for a flaw in the strange program. The strange program that looked like Xiao Long had a contemptuous smile in its eyes. Seeing this, Yang Tian couldn't help but laugh. He knew that the rune program called Little Talisman most likely couldn't do anything to the strange program. Yang Tian thought for a moment and understood the reason. The rune program that the rune master created was a tool. This tool couldn't go against his will and couldn't have its own thoughts. Compared to the strange program, this was one level lower in terms of evolution. Yang Tian had never treated the strange program as a tool, but as a partner. This acknowledgement of the strange program not only allowed it to evolve continuously, but also become a true life form. Seeing that its first attack had failed, Little Talisman quickly changed its attack method. Countless white threads suddenly gathered together and turned into a monster that looked like a toad. This monster was much bigger than the little dragon that the strange program had transformed into. It opened its mouth and swallowed the strange program into its stomach. Although he knew that the strange program would win, Yang Tian still felt nervous when he saw this situation. Just as Yang Tian's nervousness appeared, the monster's body suddenly exploded. A dragon pushed its body apart and turned it into countless runes. The strange program that had transformed into a dragon opened its mouth again, and countless runes were swallowed by it once more. Just like that, the hundreds of millions of clones that Little Fu had created were wiped out by the strange program. Come back. Little Talisman's attack methods were far more than just these two. It was about to create countless clones to attack again when it was stopped by Talisman Lord. If Xiao Fu still had self-awareness, it would definitely not be convinced and would insist on fighting a few rounds with the strange program. However, once the Rune Master gave the order, it retreated back into the rune mechanical beast body without any hesitation. This time, Little Fu's attack failed again. After these few rounds of battle, Talisman Lord had to admit that Little Talisman was indeed inferior to Yang Tian's rune program. If the two rune programs continued to battle, it would be impossible to determine the victor in a short time. If Talisman Lord knew that the strange program had not used its full strength and had only used a small portion of its strength to fight Little Talisman, while spending most of its energy on investigating the natural rune array, he would definitely be shocked again. Sigh, why did you stop? I'm not full yet. After Little Talisman retreated, the strange program said indifferently. Its tone of voice was very much like Yang Tian's. The strange program had evolved into a true life form by Yang Tian's side, so it was naturally influenced by Yang Tian. Have you found Talisman Lord's location? How we get out? Yang Tian asked with a smile. The strange program said, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more? then they would just have to wait a little longer. With the strange program, Yang Tian, who was trapped in the space illusion, was not worried at all about not being able to get out. At this moment, after absorbing a large amount of energy, Talisman Lord looked even older, and his voice had changed a lot. He glanced at the rune mecha, and a trace of reluctance flashed across his eyes. He said indifferently, "Little Talisman, I didn't expect Yang Tian to have the same rune program as you. I can't wait any longer. Whether I succeed or not will depend on you now. Master, goodbye." Little Talisman, who had always responded to Talisman Lord in a straightforward manner, paused after saying the word master before saying the word goodbye. Little Talisman's behavior made Society Lord frown, and he closed his eyes. He already knew that Little Talisman had developed a little self-awareness. Talisman Lord's next plan would only succeed if he abandoned Little Talisman. If Yang Tian did not have the help of the strange program, Talisman Lord would not have given Little Talisman his final order. After Talisman Lord closed his eyes, his expression was calm, but in truth, he was somewhat sad. But when he thought about how he would soon complete his plan and become the most powerful life form in the world, the sadness in his heart quickly disappeared. Boom! Suddenly, the rune mecha beast lying on the natural rune array's energy line exploded, and Little Talisman completely entered the natural rune array's energy line. After Little Talisman left, a blue beam of light shot down from the top of the cave and shone on Talisman Lord. In the blue light, Talisman Lord's figure disappeared in a flash. "All right, I've gathered enough information about the natural rune array." Before the strange program could finish, it said, "Trouble is coming. Rumble." Before the strange program could finish its sentence, another rumbling sound could be heard. Following the rumbling sound, the entire illusion began to tremble. "What's going on?" Yang Tian asked. The strange program said, Little Talisman swallowed the natural rune array and activated some of its special functions. Unfortunately, such an opponent is gone. After transmitting its will to the natural rune array, it was destroyed. Now, you should know what Talisman Lord wants to do, right? Yang Tian asked with a frown. Yes. The strange program said, Talisman Lord wants to use the natural rune array to control the entire continent and move it into his own energy world. Yang Tian was shocked. How is that possible? The strange program said, this is the information I've just received. Before Little Talisman was destroyed, the rune energy that it released contained some information about its consciousness. Unfortunately, it will soon have a complete self-consciousness. This old man is really amazing. Yang Tian could not help but admire Talisman Lord's crazy idea. Someone who could create a rune program had a different way of thinking from ordinary people. Next, if Talisman Lord succeeded, the entire continent, including all the living beings living on this continent, would enter Talisman Lord's energy world. At that time, Talisman Lord would be the true god of this world. His consciousness would be everywhere. With just a thought, he would be able to kill all the living beings in this world without any chance of resistance. They would not be able to escape even if they wanted to, and they would not even know where to run. Yang Tian finally understood that what the Talisman Lord had told him earlier was not completely true. There were only 9 truths and 1 lie. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.